The restaurant fell silent as the woman stood up, her eyes cold as winter steel. "I don't date single fathers," she said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Good luck with your situation." Ethan Walker watched her walk out, his daughter's photo still clutched in his trembling hand. 37 years old, widowed for 3 years, and still unable to escape the ghost of rejection. He reached for his wallet, ready to disappear into the snowy night, when a voice stopped him cold. "Can you be my new husband?" He turned. A stranger sat at the next table, watching him with emerald eyes that held no pity, only recognition. Before we begin, if you're watching from anywhere in the world, drop your city in the comments below so I can see how far this story travels. And if something in Ethan's journey speaks to you, hit that like button. Now, let's dive into a Christmas night that changed everything. The snow had started falling at dusk, those fat, lazy flakes that made Portland look like a snow globe someone had shaken too hard. Ethan Walker sat in the corner booth of Marcello's Italian restaurant, watching the condensation slide down his water glass like tiny transparent tears. His tie felt too tight. His shirt collar scratched his neck. Everything about this moment felt wrong, and he hadn't even met his date yet. Through the frosted window, he could see families walking past, couples with children bundled in bright scarves, their laughter muffled by the glass but visible in the clouds of breath that hung in the December air. Christmas lights twinkled along the street, red and green and gold, casting colored shadows across the snow. Inside the restaurant, a pianist played soft jazz versions of holiday classics, and the air smelled of garlic, basil, and other people's happiness. Ethan checked his phone for the 7th time. 7:47 p.m. Jennifer, if that was even her real name on the dating app, was 17 minutes late. His best friend Marcus had set this up, or rather, Marcus's wife Claire had. "You can't spend another Christmas alone," Claire had said last week, cornering him at the office holiday party. "Sophie needs to see her father living again, not just existing." Sophie, his 7-year-old daughter with his late wife's dark curls and his own gray eyes. The thought of her made his chest tighten. She was at Marcus and Claire's house right now, probably helping their kids decorate cookies, getting frosting in her hair, laughing in that full-body way children laugh before life teaches them restraint. "She drew you a picture for good luck," Claire had said, pressing a folded piece of construction paper into his hand before he left. "Don't open it until after the date." The paper sat in his jacket pocket now, a small square of hope he didn't deserve. "Mr. Walker?" Ethan looked up. A woman stood beside his table, blonde hair perfectly straight, makeup expertly applied, wearing a red dress that probably cost more than his mortgage payment. She looked exactly like her profile picture, which should have been reassuring but somehow wasn't. "Jennifer, hi." He started to stand, but she held up a manicured hand. "Before we sit down," she said, her voice carrying that particular brightness that meant bad news was coming, "I just want to be upfront about something. When we matched, your profile said you were family-oriented. I assumed that meant you wanted kids someday, not that you already had one." Ethan's stomach dropped. It's in my bio, second paragraph." "Oh, I don't really read those." She laughed, a tinkling sound like breaking glass. "Anyway, I saw your message this afternoon about needing to confirm the time because of your daughter's bedtime schedule, and she's at a friend's house tonight," Ethan said, hating the apologetic tone creeping into his voice. "This won't affect—" "It's not about tonight." Jennifer's smile didn't waver, which somehow made it worse. "It's about the baggage. I'm 32. I want to start fresh with someone, build something new, not step into someone else's life." The restaurant noise seemed to fade. The clinking silverware, the murmured conversations, the piano playing "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas." Ethan was aware of other diners glancing over, their curiosity barely concealed. "She's not baggage," he said quietly. "She's my daughter. I'm sure she's lovely." Jennifer shifted her designer purse from one shoulder to the other. "But I've done the single dad thing before, and it's just complicated. There's the schedule, the ex-wife drama. My wife is dead." The words came out harder than he intended. Jennifer's practiced smile faltered for just a moment, and Ethan saw something flicker across her face. Not sympathy, but irritation at having her script disrupted. "Oh," she paused. "Well, I'm sorry, but it doesn't really change the fundamental issue. You're a package deal, and I'm looking for something simpler. I'm sure you understand." She didn't wait for him to respond. With another manufactured smile and a small wave that looked like she was shooing away a fly, Jennifer turned and walked toward the exit. Her heels clicked against the hardwood floor in a steady rhythm that sounded like a countdown to his humiliation. Ethan sat frozen, his daughter's photo still displayed on his phone screen. Sophie at the playground last week, missing her 2 front teeth, grinning at the camera with such pure, unguarded joy that it hurt to look at. This was the photo he'd sent when Jennifer asked to see what she looks like. This was the photo that had ended the date before it began. Around him, the restaurant continued its Christmas celebration. A waiter carried out a birthday cake to a nearby table, sparklers fizzing in the dim light. A couple in the corner booth laughed at some private joke, their hands intertwined across the white tablecloth. An elderly man fed his wife a bite of tiramisu, and she smiled at him with the ease of 50 years together. And Ethan sat alone, still wearing the tie Sophie had helped him pick out, feeling the weight of every pitying glance from the surrounding tables. This was the 4th time in 8 months. 4 dates, 4 rejections, all for the same reason. He'd tried being upfront about Sophie in his profile. Some women unmatched immediately. He'd tried not mentioning her until the first date. They accused him of being dishonest. He'd tried dating apps for single parents. They were all looking for women who already had kids, creating some kind of ready-made Brady Bunch situation. He pulled out his wallet, ready to leave enough cash to cover the water and the table he'd monopolized, when a voice cut through his spiral of self-pity. That was brutal to watch. Ethan looked up. At the table beside his, a woman sat alone with a glass of red wine and an open laptop. She was looking directly at him, and there was something in her expression that made him pause. Not pity, not curiosity, but something sharper. Recognition, maybe. Understanding. "Excuse me?" he managed. "Your date." The woman closed her laptop with a soft click. Or lack thereof. That was brutal. Also cruel. Also frankly short-sighted on her part, but that's beside the point. She was striking rather than conventionally pretty. Sharp cheekbones, dark auburn hair pulled back in a messy bun, eyes so green they looked almost unnatural in the restaurant's warm lighting. She wore a simple black sweater and jeans, no jewelry except for small silver earrings. There was something unnervous about her, a stillness that suggested she was completely comfortable in her own skin. "I'm sorry you had to witness that," Ethan said, reaching again for his wallet. "I'll just sit down." It wasn't a request. Ethan found himself sinking back into the booth. The woman picked up her wine glass and moved to his table without invitation, sliding into the seat Jennifer had refused to take. Up close, Ethan could see faint shadows under her eyes, the kind that came from too many late nights, too much coffee, not enough sleep. But her gaze was steady, almost uncomfortably direct. "I'm Mara," she said. "Mara Lewis, and before you ask, yes, I was eavesdropping. The acoustics in here are terrible, and she wasn't exactly being subtle." Ethan Walker. He shook her offered hand, confused by this entire interaction. "And it's fine, you don't have to—" "How old is your daughter?" The question caught him off guard. 7, Sophie, she's 7. Sophie. Mara tested the name, nodding slightly. "And her mother?" "Died 3 years ago. Car accident." The words came out flat, practiced from repetition. "Drunk driver ran a red light." "I'm sorry." And unlike Jennifer's reflexive condolence, Mara's sounded genuine. "That's not baggage, by the way. That's life. Anyone who can't understand the difference isn't worth your time." Ethan felt something loosen slightly in his chest. "Thank you, but you really don't have to sit here out of pity. I'm used to—" "This isn't pity." Mara took a sip of her wine, her eyes never leaving his face. "This is opportunity. I have a proposition for you, Ethan Walker, single father of 7-year-old Sophie. And I need you to hear me out before you decide I'm insane." "Okay. Can you be my new husband?" The question landed like a bomb in the space between them. Ethan stared at her, certain he'd misheard. Around them, the restaurant continued its oblivious celebration, The piano shifted into silver bells. Someone called for more wine. The couple in the corner booth kissed softly. What? Mara set down her glass with deliberate care. I'm 34 years old. I founded a tech startup when I was 26, data analytics for healthcare systems. We went public 2 years ago. I'm worth approximately $47 million, give or take whatever the stock did today. I haven't checked. Ethan had no idea how to respond to that. I've been proposed to 11 times in the last 3 years, Mara continued, her voice matter-of-fact, like she was presenting a business case. Not one of those men knew my middle name. Not one of them could tell you my favorite book or what I'm afraid of or what I wanted to be when I was 7 years old. They knew my net worth. They knew my company's valuation. They knew what dating me could do for their careers. She leaned forward slightly, and Ethan caught the faint scent of something clean and subtle. Lavender, maybe, or sage. 3 months ago, I went on a date with a venture capitalist. Very handsome, very successful in his own right. Halfway through dinner, he told me he'd already calculated what our combined assets would be after marriage. He had a prenup drafted. He'd planned our entire financial future. Her laugh was hollow. He still couldn't remember if I preferred coffee or tea. Ethan searched for the right word. Depressing. That's reality. For me, anyway. Mara traced the rim of her wine glass with one finger. I can't have children, Ethan. Endometriosis. Multiple surgeries. The doctors were very clear. And do you know what happened when I told my fiancé? My actual fiancé, the man I'd been with for 4 years. Do you know what he said? Ethan shook his head, already dreading the answer. He said, I can't build a legacy with broken parts. Her voice didn't waver, but something flickered in her eyes, an old wound, not quite healed. He left 6 days before our wedding, took the ring, took the deposits, took his genetic potential elsewhere. That's accurate? Mara's smile was sharp. He wasn't wrong, technically. I am broken. In the very specific way that matters to men who want biological heirs. I just thought we were building something different. My mistake. The waiter approached their table, then seemed to sense the intensity of the conversation and veered away toward the kitchen. So here's my situation, Mara said, shifting in her seat. I'm exhausted. I'm tired of men who want my money and resent my success. I'm tired of being treated like a fertility problem instead of a person. I'm tired of first dates where they've already looked up my company's quarterly earnings. And I'm especially tired of being alone on Christmas, sitting in restaurants watching other people's happiness. She met his eyes directly, and Ethan felt the full force of her attention, sharp, analytical, and somehow vulnerable beneath it all. You just got rejected for the one thing that should make you more attractive, not less. You're a father, you show up, you care enough to keep trying despite repeated humiliation. You sent that woman a photo of your daughter with such obvious pride that it was visible from 3 feet away. You saw that? I'm observant. It's my job. Mara paused. Here's what I'm proposing. Not romance. Not love at first sight. Not some fantasy where we pretend this is anything other than what it is. 2 people who are tired of being alone, tired of being rejected for the wrong reasons, and willing to be honest about what they actually need. Ethan's heart was beating faster now, a mix of confusion and something he couldn't quite name. I don't understand what you're asking. I'm asking if you want to try something different, something real, a partnership based on honesty instead of hormones, compatibility instead of chemistry. She leaned back, giving him space. You need someone who won't run from your daughter, someone who wants to be a family, not just play house until something better comes along. I need someone who sees me as a person, not a portfolio. Someone who won't blame me for what my body can't do. This is insane, Ethan said, but he didn't stand up. Probably. But is it more insane than what you've been doing? How many more Jennifers are you willing to endure? How many more times are you going to watch your daughter's photo become a deal breaker? The words hit home. Ethan thought of Sophie's face when he'd left tonight, how she'd hugged him extra tight and whispered, "Find someone nice, Daddy." How she'd started asking if she was the reason he was always alone. How a 7-year-old child had somehow internalized the idea that she was an obstacle to his happiness. I have one condition, Mara said. You let me meet Sophie, not tomorrow, not next week, but soon. If she hates me, we walk away. If I can't be what she needs, we stop. This only works if she chooses it too. You want my daughter to decide if you become her stepmother? Ethan's voice rose slightly. That's too much pressure for a kid. No, Mara's voice softened. I want your daughter to decide if she wants me in her life. There's a difference. Kids know things adults forget. They know who's genuine, who's present, who actually cares. If Sophie and I can't build something real, then you and I don't have a foundation anyway. The piano music shifted again, something slower and sadder. I'll be home for Christmas. The version that always made Ethan think of soldiers overseas, of empty chairs at holiday tables. Why me? He asked finally. You could have anyone. I don't want anyone. I want someone who understands what it's like to be judged for circumstances beyond your control. Someone who's been hurt enough to value honesty over performance. Mara's expression was open, almost painfully sincere. I watched that woman reject you for being a good father, and I thought, there's someone who understands. There's someone who might not run when things get complicated. Ethan looked at this stranger who'd just proposed marriage over rejected wine and humiliation. She was either the craziest person he'd ever met or the sanest. He couldn't decide which. I need time to think, he said. Of course. Take all the time you need. Mara pulled out her phone, typed something quickly, and showed him the screen. That's my number. Text me when you're ready, or don't. No pressure, no expectations, just an offer from one lonely person to another. She stood, gathering her laptop and bag with efficient movements. But before she left, she paused, looking down at him with something that might have been hope or might have been resignation. He couldn't tell. For what it's worth, she said quietly, that woman was an idiot. Your daughter is lucky to have a father who fights for her the way you do. Don't let anyone convince you that love is a liability. Then she was gone, disappearing into the snowy night beyond the restaurant's warm glow, leaving Ethan alone with her phone number on his screen and a question that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. Can you be my new husband? He sat there for another 10 minutes, watching the snow fall harder outside, transforming Portland into something clean and new and impossible. The waiter finally approached, apologetic about interrupting, asking if he wanted to order anything. Just the check for my water, Ethan said. Please? While he waited, he pulled out the folded construction paper from his jacket pocket. Sophie's good luck drawing. His hands shook slightly as he opened it. She'd drawn 3 figures in crayon. A tall one labeled Daddy in her careful 7-year-old printing, a smaller one labeled Me with dark curly hair and a gap-toothed smile, and between them, a blank space with a question mark. Above it all, in red crayon stars, our family, maybe? Ethan stared at that empty space, that question mark his daughter had placed between them. The space where Sarah used to be. The space that had been empty for 3 years. The space Sophie was wondering if someone, anyone, might fill. His phone buzzed. Marcus. How'd it go? Claire's betting disaster. I'm cautiously optimistic. Sophie made you brownies. He typed back, disaster. But weird. Tell you later. Then before he could talk himself out of it, Ethan opened a new message to the number Mara had shown him. His thumbs hovered over the keyboard. What did you say to someone who proposed marriage in a restaurant on Christmas night? What did you say to a stranger who somehow saw straight through to the loneliness you tried so hard to hide? He typed, This is Ethan, the guy from the restaurant. I'm not sure what to say except that I'm interested and terrified. Mostly terrified, but interested. The response came back in less than 30 seconds. Terrified is honest. Honest is good. Coffee tomorrow? There's a place near Pioneer Square. 2 p.m.? I'll tell you more about my particular brand of broken, and you can decide if your particular brand of broken can work with it. Ethan smiled despite himself. How do you know I'm broken? Everyone sitting alone in restaurants on Christmas night is broken. The question is whether we can build something functional from the pieces. He thought about that. About pieces. About building. About Sophie's question mark waiting to be answered with something more than silence and serial rejection. 2 p.m. works, he typed. Fair warning, I'm going to have a lot of questions. Good. So do I. See See you tomorrow, Ethan Walker. He paid for his water, left a generous tip for the table he'd occupied, and walked out into the snow. The cold air hit his face like a slap, sharp and clarifying. Christmas lights reflected off the fresh powder, turning the world into something magical and surreal. His car was parked 3 blocks away. As he walked, his phone buzzed again, Claire this time. Marcus told me it was a disaster. Sophie wants to know if you're okay. Call when you can. He would call. He would tell them some version of tonight's story, though he wasn't sure yet which version. The one where he got rejected again, or the one where a stranger proposed marriage, or the one where both things happened and he said yes to the most insane offer of his life. But first, he stood in the falling snow and let himself feel something he hadn't felt in 3 years. Possibility. Not hope. That was too strong, too dangerous. But possibility. The sense that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward that didn't involve endless rejection and apologizing for his daughter's existence. A way forward that didn't require him to be less than he was or pretend Sophie was anything other than the center of his universe. Somewhere in this city, Mara Lewis was probably sitting in her expensive apartment, wondering if he'd actually show up tomorrow, or if she'd just made a spectacular fool of herself. Somewhere, Sophie was covered in cookie dough and Christmas chaos, safe and happy, and completely unaware that her father had just been proposed to by a millionaire tech founder who couldn't have children but wanted a family anyway. And here, in the snow, Ethan Walker let himself imagine what it might be like to stop fighting alone. To have someone who understood that loving his daughter wasn't a flaw to overlook, but a strength to embrace. To build something new from broken pieces. Not perfect, not whole, but maybe functional enough to call a family. His phone buzzed one more time. Sophie, texting from Claire's phone. Did she like you, Daddy? Did you have fun? He typed back. It was complicated, sweetheart, but interesting. I'll tell you about it tomorrow. Sweet dreams. I made you brownies with extra chocolate. Perfect. I love you, Sophie girl. Love you infinity, Daddy. Infinity. That's what his daughter believed in. Infinite love, infinite possibility, infinite second chances. Maybe she was onto something. Ethan got in his car, turned on the heat, and sat there while the engine warmed and snow accumulated on the windshield. Through the frosted glass, he could still see the restaurant, warm light spilling onto the snowy sidewalk, people celebrating inside, completely unaware that in the corner booth, someone's entire life had just tilted sideways. Tomorrow, he would meet Mara Lewis for coffee. Tomorrow, he would ask his 100 questions and hear her answers and decide if this crazy proposition had even a shred of possibility. Tomorrow, he would figure out how to explain to his daughter that sometimes the best things come from the worst moments, and that love, if you could call it that, sometimes looked nothing like you expected. But tonight, on Christmas night, with snow falling and his daughter's question mark still visible in his mind, Ethan allowed himself to believe that maybe, just maybe, the story wasn't over. Maybe there were more chapters waiting. Maybe broken pieces could build something new. Maybe a stranger's question in a crowded restaurant was actually the answer he'd been looking for all along. He cleared the snow from his windshield, put the car in gear, and drove toward Marcus and Claire's house to pick up his daughter. Sophie would be waiting, covered in frosting and questions, ready to hear about her father's night. And for the first time in 3 years, Ethan had something approaching a good story to tell. The snow fell harder, covering Portland in white, making everything clean and new and full of strange, terrifying possibility. In his pocket, his phone held a stranger's number and the promise of coffee at 2 p.m. Can you be my new husband? The question followed him through the snowy streets, not demanding an answer yet, just presenting a possibility. A door opening in a wall he'd thought was solid, a question mark where his daughter had drawn one, waiting to be filled with something, someone, real. Ethan didn't know if Mara Lewis was the answer, but for the first time in years, he was willing to find out. The coffee shop near Pioneer Square was the kind of place that tried too hard to be quirky. Mismatched furniture, Edison bulbs hanging from exposed pipes, a chalkboard menu written in unnecessarily elaborate script. Ethan arrived 15 minutes early, a nervous habit he'd developed in his consulting days when being late meant losing clients. Now it just meant more time to second-guess every decision that had led him to this moment. He ordered a black coffee he didn't want and claimed a table by the window where he could watch the Saturday afternoon foot traffic. The snow from last night had mostly melted, leaving Portland gray and damp and ordinary again. Magic never lasted in daylight. His phone showed 1:47 p.m. 13 minutes until he either started the strangest relationship of his life or confirmed that last night had been some kind of stress-induced hallucination brought on by public humiliation and too much holiday loneliness. Sophie was at a birthday party for one of her classmates, giving him until 4 o'clock before pickup. He told Marcus about the coffee meeting, but not the proposal. How did you explain that a stranger had offered marriage over rejected wine and shared misery? Marcus would think he'd lost his mind. Claire would start planning a wedding or an intervention, possibly both. The door chimed. Mara Lewis walked in wearing dark jeans, boots, and a forest green jacket that made her eyes look even more startling than they had in the restaurant's dim lighting. She spotted him immediately. No hesitation, no pretense of looking around first. Direct, purposeful. Everything about her movement suggested someone who didn't waste time on uncertainty. "You came," she said, sliding into the chair across from him. No preamble, no small talk. "I said I would." People say a lot of things they don't mean, especially after witnessing public rejection and receiving marriage proposals from strangers. "But," she signaled the barista with a small wave, "I've had 16 hours to regret last night. Decided around 3 this morning that I'd either made the best decision of my life or completely sabotaged any chance of normal human interaction ever again." "Which one did you land on?" "Still deciding. You?" Ethan wrapped his hands around his coffee cup, feeling the warmth seep into his palms. "I wrote down questions, actual questions, on paper, like I was preparing for a business meeting. Then I threw the paper away because it felt insane. Then I rewrote them on my phone." "Show me." He hesitated, then pulled out his phone and handed it over. Mara scrolled through his notes, her expression unreadable. The barista brought her an Americano without being asked. Apparently she was a regular here, and Mara nodded her thanks without looking up. "These are good questions," she said finally, handing the phone back. "Thorough, maybe a little formal, but good. Should we go through them in order, or should I just start talking and see what we cover?" "I don't know the protocol for this. Is there a protocol for this?" "Not that I'm aware of." She took a sip of her coffee, watching him over the rim. "Okay, let's start with the most important one. Why marriage? Why not just dating? Why not seeing where things go organically?" Ethan had been wondering the same thing all night. "That was my first question, actually. Because organic hasn't worked for either of us. Because dating is performance, and I'm tired of performing. Because if we're going to do this, we need to do it with intention and honesty, not just drift along hoping chemistry saves us from incompatibility." Mara set down her cup with deliberate care. "When my fiancé left, I did all the things you're supposed to do. Therapy, self-help books, dating apps, putting myself out there. And every single relationship followed the same pattern. Initial attraction, surface compatibility, then the reveal." "The reveal?" "That I can't have children, that I'm not going to be the mother of anyone's biological legacy, that I'm fundamentally broken in the way that matters most to most men." Her voice was matter of fact, but Ethan caught the edge underneath. "After the third guy ghosted me when I told him, I started leading with it. Put it right in my dating profile. Cannot have children due to medical reasons. If that's a deal breaker, swipe left." You know what happened? They swiped left. 97% of them. I tracked it. She smiled without humor. The 3% who swiped right fell into 2 categories. Men who already had kids and wanted to avoid more child support, or men who saw my bank account and decided they could overlook my defective reproductive system. A couple at the next table laughed at something on their shared phone screen, the sound jarring against the weight of Mara's words. "So I stopped dating for intention and started observing patterns," she continued. "And the pattern was clear. People lie. They say they want connection, but they want convenience. They say they want honesty, but they want the version of honesty that doesn't disrupt their fantasy. They say they'll accept you as you are, right up until as you are becomes inconvenient." That's pretty cynical. That's pretty accurate. Mara leaned back in her chair. "But last night I watched a woman reject you for being a good father, for having a daughter you clearly adore. And I thought, there's someone who understands. There's someone who's been rejected for the things that should make them more valuable, not less. Ethan thought about Jennifer's manufactured smile, her casual dismissal of Sophie as baggage. He thought about the three women before her, all with different faces and voices, but the same basic message. You're great, but your daughter is a problem I don't want to solve. Your turn, Mara said. Ask me something. He looked at his phone, at the list of questions he'd agonized over at 2 a.m. Do you actually want to be a mother, or do you just want to not be alone? The question came out sharper than he'd intended, but Mara didn't flinch. Both, she said simply. I want to be a mother. I've wanted it since I was young enough to think all dolls needed elaborate backstories and emotional complexity. I planned their futures, college funds, music lessons, the whole fantasy. When I was diagnosed with endometriosis at 23, my doctor said I might have difficulty conceiving. When I was 28, after the third surgery, she said I'd likely never carry a pregnancy. When I was 30, my fiancé left because he wanted biological children more than he wanted me. She paused, tracing the rim of her cup with one finger in a gesture Ethan was beginning to recognize as thinking time. So yes, I want to be a mother. I want to pack school lunches and argue about bedtimes and attend terrible school plays where the sound system doesn't work. I want to be the person someone calls when they're scared or hurt or triumphant. I want to matter to someone in that complete, irreplaceable way. She met his eyes directly. But I also don't want to be alone anymore. I'm tired of coming home to empty silence. I'm tired of making decisions in a vacuum. I'm tired of being successful and accomplished and fundamentally isolated. Those are two different needs. They're related needs, and with you, they're the same solution. Mara shifted forward. Your daughter already exists. She already needs a mother figure. Maybe not immediately, maybe not in the traditional sense, but eventually. You already need a partner who won't run from that reality. I need to be part of a family, and you need someone who wants to be part of yours. The math works. People aren't math. No, but compatibility is. Shared goals, aligned values, compatible needs. That's what sustains relationships when attraction fades and novelty wears off. She softened slightly. I'm not saying we can't develop feelings for each other. I'm saying we shouldn't wait for feelings to tell us if this makes sense. We should decide if it makes sense, then see if feelings follow. The barista called out an order. Vanilla latte for Jessica. And a young woman bounced up to claim it, ponytail swinging, looking like someone whose biggest problem was whether to add an extra shot of espresso. Ethan took a long sip of his coffee, buying time to organize his thoughts. Everything Mara said made a terrible kind of sense. It was logical, practical, honest, in a way that most relationship advice explicitly warned against. You were supposed to follow your heart, trust your gut, believe in love at first sight, or at least strong initial attraction. But his heart had died with Sarah in an intersection 3 years ago. His gut had led him through 4 humiliating rejections in 8 months. An attraction without compatibility had left him lonelier than being alone. Tell me about your ex-fiancé, he said. The one who left. Mara's expression went carefully neutral. His name was David. We met in grad school. He was getting his MBA while I was finishing my master's in computer science. He was charming, ambitious, supportive when I started my company. We got engaged after 4 years together. I thought we were building something permanent. When did you tell him about the fertility issues? After the engagement. I know. I should have told him earlier. But I kept thinking maybe the doctors were wrong. Maybe there'd be new treatments. Maybe it wouldn't matter as much as I feared. She looked away, out the window at the gray Portland afternoon. I was wrong. I told him 6 months before the wedding. He stayed for 2 weeks, then said he needed to reevaluate his long-term goals. Those were his actual words. Like I was a business strategy that wasn't performing to expectations. I'm sorry. Don't be. He did me a favor. Better to know before the marriage than after. Mara turned back to him. Your turn. Tell me about your wife. The question landed like a physical blow, even though he'd been expecting it. No one got through this conversation without addressing the ghost in the room. Sarah, he said, and just saying her name still hurt in a way he couldn't quite describe. We met in college, married at 24, which everyone said was too young, had Sophie when we were 30. She was a teacher, 3rd grade. She loved those kids like they were her own. How did she die? Car accident, December 22nd, 3 years ago. She was coming home from her school's winter concert. Some guy ran a red light going 60 in a 35 zone. Blood alcohol 3 times the legal limit. He walked away with a broken collarbone. Sarah died at the scene. The words came out flat, rehearsed from repetition to lawyers and insurance adjusters and well-meaning friends who wanted details he didn't want to relive. Sophie was 4, he continued. Old enough to understand mommy was gone, too young to understand why or that it was permanent. She asked every day for 6 months when mommy was coming home. Then one day she stopped asking and started drawing pictures of our family with only 2 people in it. Mara didn't offer platitudes or sympathy. She just listened, her green eyes steady and focused entirely on him. The first year was survival, Ethan said. Figure out breakfast, get Sophie to daycare, work, pick her up, dinner, bedtime, collapse. Repeat. I had no idea what I was doing. I burned mac and cheese, I put her shirts on backwards. I forgot about school picture day and she showed up in a stained sweatshirt while every other kid wore their best outfit. But you showed up. I showed up every day because she needed me to. He wrapped his hands tighter around his coffee cup. The second year was harder in different ways. The shock wore off and reality set in. This was permanent. This was our life now. Sarah wasn't coming back. I wasn't going to wake up and discover it was all a nightmare. Sophie started asking questions I couldn't answer. Why did mommy have to die? Why didn't the other driver die instead? Is it my fault? Is it my fault? Mara repeated softly. The question every child asks when trauma happens. I took her to a grief counselor, a good one. She helped Sophie understand that bad things happen to good people, that love doesn't prevent loss, that her feelings were normal and valid and not her responsibility to fix. Ethan felt his throat tighten. The counselor told me that Sophie would be okay as long as she felt secure and loved, that the worst thing I could do was let her believe she was the reason I was alone. But that's exactly what dating has shown her. The observation cut deep because it was true. Every time I try to move forward, Sophie sees me fail. She's starting to think she's the problem, that she's the reason I can't find someone, that if I didn't have her, I'd be happy. Which is exactly backwards. I know that. You know that. But she's 7. She doesn't have context for adult dysfunction and societal expectations about blended families. Ethan met Mara's eyes. That's why your proposal terrified me. If I bring someone into Sophie's life and it doesn't work, I'm not just losing another relationship. I'm proving to my daughter that she really is unlovable baggage. The word hung between them, ugly and sharp. Mara was quiet for a long moment, her expression thoughtful. Outside, a bus hissed to a stop, disgorging a small crowd of Saturday shoppers laden with bags. The coffee shop's soundtrack shifted from indie folk to something jazzy and abstract. I can't promise I won't fail, Mara said finally. I can't promise I'll be a perfect mother figure, or that Sophie and I will instantly bond, or that this will work the way we hope. But I can promise I won't run. I can promise I'll show up. And I can promise that if it doesn't work, it won't be because I didn't try or because Sophie wasn't enough. How can you promise that? You've never met her. I've met dozens of kids through volunteer work and mentorship programs. I know they're perceptive, honest, and extraordinarily good at detecting bullshit. They know when adults are performing versus when they're present. If Sophie and I are going to build something real, it has to be based on genuine connection, not me trying to win her over with Disney princess bullshit and fake enthusiasm. Ethan almost smiled. She's past the princess phase. She's into space now, wants to be an astronaut. Smart kid. Space is more interesting than princes. Mara leaned forward. Here's what I'm proposing. Let me meet her. No pressure, no expectations. Somewhere neutral where she feels comfortable. I'll be honest about who I am and why I'm there. If she hates me, we walk away. If she's indifferent, we give it time. If she's open to seeing me again, we build slowly. And if she gets attached and then you change your mind? I won't change my mind about showing up. I might change my mind about whether this works long term, but I won't disappear overnight. I won't ghost her. I won't make promises I can't keep. Mara's voice was firm. I know what it feels like to be abandoned by someone who is supposed to stay. I won't do that to a child. I won't do that to anyone. Ethan studied her face, looking for signs of uncertainty or performance. But Mara's expression was open, direct, unflinching. She meant what she said, or she was the best liar he'd ever met. I have conditions, he said. Good. So do I. You first. We go slow. You meet Sophie, but we don't tell her you're my girlfriend or potential wife or anything loaded. You're my friend, someone I'm spending time with. She gets to decide the pace of involvement. Agreed. You don't make promises you can't keep. No, I'll always be here or I'll never leave. Kids are literal. They'll hold you to every word. Noted. If at any point this feels wrong for Sophie, if she's showing signs of stress or attachment issues or acting out, we reevaluate. Her well-being comes first, always. Mara nodded. Non-negotiable. What else? You tell me the truth about everything. If you're having doubts, if you're overwhelmed, if you realize this isn't what you want, you tell me immediately. I can handle rejection. I can't handle deception. Same goes for you. If you're still in love with your wife, if you're just using me as a convenient solution, if you realize you're not actually ready, you tell me. She paused. Are you still in love with Sarah? The question hung in the air like smoke. Ethan thought about Sarah's laugh, her terrible singing voice, the way she'd steal his coffee every morning and claim she forgot to make her own. He thought about the last words she'd said to him, something mundane about picking up milk on the way home, and how he'd give anything to have one more mundane conversation. I'll always love her, he said finally. She's Sophie's mother. She was my best friend. But she's gone, and I'm not. And I can't keep living like I died with her. He met Mara's eyes. I'm not looking for a replacement. I'm looking for a future. There's a difference. Good. Because I'm not interested in being anyone's consolation prize or living memorial. Mara took a breath. My conditions. You introduce me to Sophie as someone important to you, not just a random friend. She needs to understand that you're investing in this relationship, that I matter to you, even if we're still figuring out what that means. Okay? You don't compare me to Sarah. Not out loud, not in your head, not in how you expect me to parent or partner. I'm my own person with my own approach. If that's incompatible with your life, fine. But I won't spend our relationship competing with a ghost. The words stung, but they were fair. Agreed. You're honest about your needs. If you need space, tell me. If you need support, tell me. If you need me to step back or step up with Sophie, tell me. I can't read minds, and I won't waste time guessing what you're thinking. I can do that. Mara sat back, studying him with those sharp green eyes. Last condition, we give this 6 months. 6 months of genuine effort, spending time together, building something real, letting Sophie get to know me. At the end of 6 months, we evaluate honestly. If it's working, we move forward with actual commitment. If it's not working, we end it cleanly with no hard feelings and no blame. 6 months feels short for Sophie to adjust. 6 months feels long to invest in something that might not work. But I'm flexible. What's your timeline? Ethan thought about Sophie's question mark drawing, about the empty space in their family that had been vacant for 3 years. 9 months. That takes us through spring, through summer break, through the start of a new school year, enough time to see how we function through different seasons and stresses. 9 months, Mara agreed. Deal. She held out her hand across the table, formal and businesslike, like they were closing a contract negotiation rather than committing to an experimental relationship that violated every conventional dating rule. Ethan shook her hand. Her grip was firm, her skin warm, her expression serious. So now what? He asked. Now I tell you the parts I left out last night, the parts that might change your mind. Mara withdrew her hand and wrapped it around her coffee cup. I'm not easy to live with. I work 60-hour weeks sometimes. I'm obsessive about my projects. I forget to eat when I'm focused on code. I have nightmares about failure that wake me up at 3 in the morning. That doesn't sound... I'm also bad at emotional regulation. When I'm stressed, I shut down. I go quiet and internal and unreachable. My ex called it the ice wall. I called it self-preservation. Neither of us was wrong. Ethan absorbed this. Anything else? I don't cook. I can cook. I know the mechanics, but I hate it. I survive on takeout and meal delivery services. If you're expecting homemade dinners, you'll be disappointed. Sophie and I mostly eat frozen pizza and whatever Marcus's wife sends home with me. We'll survive. I travel for work. Not constantly, but sometimes. Conferences, investor meetings, site visits, usually no more than 1 week per month, but it varies. Okay? And Mara paused, choosing words carefully. I'm not naturally warm. I don't do baby voices or gushing enthusiasm or spontaneous hugs. I'm affectionate in my own way, but it's not the stereotype. If Sophie needs Disney mom energy, she won't get it from me. She needs consistency and honesty more than performance, Ethan said. What she's gotten from me is awkward and authentic. We'll match your energy. Mara's expression softened slightly. Your turn. Tell me what I'm signing up for. Ethan thought about his own list of flaws and failures. I'm risk-averse to the point of paralysis sometimes. Sarah was the spontaneous one. I'm the guy who makes spreadsheets for vacation planning and lists pros and cons before buying groceries. I like spreadsheets. I'm also overprotective, especially with Sophie. I check on her 3 times after bedtime. I panic about normal childhood risks. I probably need therapy to work through my control issues. Probably, but understandable given what you've lost. I'm boring. I don't travel much. I don't have exciting hobbies. I don't do adventure sports or spontaneous road trips. I'm a consultant who goes to the office, comes home, helps with homework, and watches nature documentaries until I fall asleep on the couch. Boring sounds stable. Stable sounds good. Ethan managed a small smile. And I'm probably not ready for this. Probably not emotionally healthy enough to start a relationship. Probably should be in more therapy before inflicting myself on someone new. We're both disasters, Mara said. The question is whether we're compatible disasters. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their mutual confession settling between them. Around them, the coffee shop continued its Saturday rhythm. Students typing on laptops, couples sharing pastries, a small child coloring at a corner table while their parents scrolled through their phone. When can I meet Sophie? Mara asked. The question sent a spike of anxiety through Ethan's chest. Soon, but I need to prepare her first. I need to explain who you are and why you're important without overwhelming her with expectations. What will you tell her? The truth. That I met someone interesting, that you want to be friends with both of us, that we're seeing if we fit together as a family. She'll have questions. Sophie always has questions. She's 7 and understands approximately 30% of what adults mean when they talk, so she compensates by asking for clarification on everything. Mara smiled, a real smile this time, not the careful professional expression she'd been wearing. I like her already. Don't say that until you've experienced an hour of why, questions about why the sky is blue, and why we can't keep the stray cat that lives behind our building, and why some people are mean, and why stars die. Those are excellent questions, especially the last one. Something shifted in the air between them, not romance exactly, but recognition. A sense that maybe, possibly, this strange arrangement might have a foundation beyond desperation and loneliness. The park, Ethan said suddenly. There's a park near our house. Sophie goes there most Saturdays after lunch. We could meet there, casual, low pressure. If it goes badly, you can leave and she won't feel trapped. This Saturday? Next Saturday. That gives me a week to prepare her, and you a week to change your mind. I won't change my mind. You might. This is insane, Mara. Everything about this violates every rule of healthy relationship building. Good thing we're not trying to build a healthy relationship by conventional standards. She finished her coffee in one long swallow. We're building something different, something honest, something that starts with eyes wide open instead of closed in romantic delusion. Is that what romance is? Delusion? Romance is great for the first 6 months. Then reality sets in. People discover incompatibility, and they either adapt or break up. We're just front-loading the reality part. Ethan's phone buzzed, a reminder that he needed to pick up Sophie in 45 minutes. I have to go soon. One more thing before you do. Mara pulled out her phone and opened her photos. You showed your date a picture of Sophie. I want to show you something too. She turned the screen toward him. The photo showed Mara sitting on a floor surrounded by a group of children, maybe 8 or 9 years old. They were building something with wooden blocks, an elaborate tower or structure. Mara's hair was pulled back, her expression focused and engaged, and she was listening intently to a small boy who was gesturing enthusiastically at their creation. "This is from the STEM mentorship program I volunteer with," she explained. "Underprivileged kids mostly. We do coding, robotics, engineering projects. This kid, his name is Marcus coincidentally, he wanted to build a bridge that could hold his weight. Spent 6 weeks on the design. This was the day it worked. Did it hold him? Barely. But it held, and he cried. Happy tears, best day of my year." She put the phone away. "I'm not naturally maternal in the traditional sense, but I care about kids. I respect them. I show up, and I keep showing up until they trust that I'm not going anywhere." Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. Not quite hope, but close to it. Okay. Okay, I'll introduce you to Sophie next Saturday. No promises beyond that, but I'll give this an honest chance. Mara's smile was small, but genuine. That's all I'm asking. They stood, gathering their things with the awkward awareness of people who'd just committed to something significant without quite knowing what it meant. Outside, the afternoon was fading into evening, the sky that particular shade of gray that meant more rain coming. At the door, Mara paused. "Ethan? Thank you for not running, for being willing to try something that makes no sense. Thank you for asking, for seeing Sophie as something other than a liability." "She's not a liability, she's the whole point." Mara zipped up her jacket. "Text me the park location and time, I'll be there." Then she was gone, disappearing into the crowd of Saturday shoppers with that same purposeful stride he'd noticed earlier. Ethan stood watching until she turned a corner and vanished, wondering what exactly he'd just agreed to and whether he'd just made the best or worst decision of his post-Sarah life. His phone buzzed again. Sophie texting from the birthday party. "Daddy, can we get ice cream on the way home? Please, please, please. He typed back. "We'll see, sweetheart. Be ready in 15 minutes." As he walked to his car, Ethan thought about question marks and empty spaces and strangers who somehow saw straight through to the loneliness underneath. He thought about Mara's direct gaze and her honest admission of her own brokenness. He thought about Sarah's ghost and Sophie's hope and the terrifying possibility that maybe, just maybe, there was a way forward that didn't require him to choose between honoring his past and building his future. The rain started as he pulled into the birthday party venue, that soft Portland drizzle that wasn't quite rain but wasn't quite mist. Sophie burst out of the building wearing a paper crown and carrying a goodie bag, her face bright with sugar and excitement. "Daddy, guess what? We had 3 kinds of cake, and I wanted musical chairs, and Emma's mom said I could come over next week for a play date." She climbed into the car, a whirlwind of energy and joy, completely unaware that her father had just agreed to let a stranger try to become her family. "Sounds like a great party," Ethan said, helping her with the seatbelt. "It was the best. Can we get ice cream? I know I had cake, but ice cream is different." "Ice cream is different," he agreed, pulling out of the parking lot. Sophie chattered about the party all the way to the ice cream shop, a stream of consciousness narrative about games and presents and who said what to whom. Ethan listened with half his attention, the other half still processing the coffee shop conversation and its implications. They got their ice cream, Superman for Sophie, vanilla for Ethan, and sat at one of the bright plastic tables. Rain streaked the windows, turning the world outside into watercolor blurs. "Daddy?" Sophie looked up from her rainbow ice cream, her expression suddenly serious. "Are you sad?" "What?" "No, sweetheart. Why?" "You have your thinking face. You only get that when you're worried or sad." Ethan set down his spoon. His daughter was 7 years old and could already read him better than most adults. "I'm not sad. I'm thinking about something important." "About work?" "About us. About our family." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Are we moving? I don't want to move. Emma's my best friend and Mrs. Patterson is the best teacher and we're not moving. Nothing like that." He chose his words carefully. "Remember how you asked if I'd find someone nice? On your date last night, did you? Was she nice?" Sophie bounced in her seat, ice cream forgotten. "The date didn't work out, but I met someone else. Someone different. Her name is Mara." "Is she your girlfriend?" She's my friend, someone I like spending time with, and she wants to meet you. Sophie processed this, her 7-year-old brain working through implications that Ethan couldn't predict. Does she know about Mommy? Yes. She knows about Mommy. She knows how much we loved her and how much we miss her. Is Mara going to be my new mommy? The question landed like a punch. I don't know, Sophie girl. Maybe someday. But first we need to see if we all like each other, if we fit together. What if I don't like her? Then we don't keep seeing her. Your feelings matter most. Sophie returned to her ice cream, thinking hard. What if I do like her? And then she goes away like Mommy did. And there it was. The fear underneath everything, the trauma that shaped her small understanding of love and loss. Ethan reached across the table and took his daughter's sticky hand. Mara won't leave like Mommy did. Mommy didn't choose to go. She was taken from us. That's different. But if Mara decides she doesn't fit with our family, she'll tell us. She won't just disappear. Promise? I promise that we'll always be honest with you about what's happening. And I promise that no matter what, you and I are forever, okay? Sophie nodded, apparently satisfied. Can I meet her soon? Next Saturday. At the park. The one with the good swings? That's the one. Okay. Can I finish my ice cream now? Yes, sweetheart. Just like that, the moment passed. Sophie returned to her rainbow ice cream and stories about the birthday party, while Ethan sat across from her marveling at her resilience and terrified of breaking it. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Ethan lay in bed staring at the ceiling and thinking about compatibility versus chemistry, about broken pieces building something new, about strangers who saw what others missed. His phone lit up with a text from Mara. Thank you for today, for being honest and for giving this a chance. Sleep well. He typed back, thank you for not running. Sophie's excited to meet you. So am I. Nervous, but excited. Nervous is appropriate. This is either brilliant or insane. Maybe both, he sent. Probably both. Good night, Ethan. Good night, Mara. He set the phone down and closed his eyes, but sleep was a long time coming. Somewhere in the city, Mara was probably also lying awake, wondering if she'd made a terrible mistake or taken the first step toward something real. And somewhere between them, the possibility hung suspended, fragile and strange and honest in a way that traditional romance never was. Not perfect, not whole, but maybe, possibly, functional enough to call a beginning. The week crawled by with the particular slowness of time when something important waited at the end of it. Ethan found himself checking his phone obsessively, rereading Mara's brief texts, second-guessing every decision that had led to Saturday's park meeting. Sophie, meanwhile, asked about Mara approximately 47 times by Wednesday, her questions ranging from does she like space to what if she thinks I'm weird, to the particularly loaded will she stay if she doesn't like me? By Friday night, Ethan was a mess of anxiety and regret. He stood in Sophie's doorway watching her sleep, her dark curls spread across the pillow, one arm wrapped around the stuffed elephant Sarah had given her for her 4th birthday. The elephant's fur was matted from years of constant companionship. One ear hanging by threads, Sophie refused to let him repair. I hope I'm doing the right thing, he whispered to the sleeping child, to Sarah's ghost, to whatever force in the universe determined whether desperate fathers made good or catastrophic choices. Sophie stirred but didn't wake. Ethan pulled her door mostly closed and went to his own room, where sleep came in fractured pieces between dreams of coffee shops and empty spaces, and question marks waiting to be filled. Saturday morning arrived gray and cold but mercifully dry. Sophie woke up early, bursting into Ethan's room at 6:30 with the kind of energy that suggested she'd been awake for hours planning this moment. Is today the day? Is it today? When do we meet her? What should I wear? Should I bring something? Does she like drawings? I made her one just in case, but maybe that's weird. Is it weird, Daddy? Ethan pulled himself into consciousness with effort. It's today. We're meeting her at noon. You can wear whatever you want. And the drawing isn't weird, it's thoughtful. What if she doesn't like it? Then she'll still appreciate that you made it. What if she doesn't like me? Ethan sat up, pulling Sophie onto the bed beside him. Then she's missing out on knowing an amazing kid who likes space and asks good questions and makes people laugh even when they're sad. Sophie leaned against him, small and warm and terrified in the way children are when they sense something significant is happening but can't quite grasp its shape. "What if I don't like her?" she asked quietly. "Then we thank her for trying and we don't see her again. Your feelings are what matter most, Sophie girl. Always." They spent the morning in careful distraction. Pancakes for breakfast, a cartoon Sophie had seen a dozen times, organizing her rock collection by color, and then by size, and then by which ones looked like they might be from outer space. By 11:30, Sophie had changed outfits 3 times and was wearing her favorite purple sweatshirt with a constellation pattern, jeans with permanent grass stains on the knees, and the light-up sneakers she'd gotten for her birthday. "Do I look okay?" she asked, spinning in a circle. "You look perfect." "You have to say that. You're my dad." "I have to say it because it's true." They drove to the park in relative silence, Sophie's nervous energy filling the car like static electricity. Ethan's hands were sweating on the steering wheel. He texted Mara that morning, still on for noon, and gotten back a single word: yes. The park was moderately crowded for a late January Saturday. Families clustered around the playground equipment, dogs chased tennis balls in the open field. A group of teenagers occupied the basketball court with varying degrees of skill and enthusiasm. The air smelled like damp earth and someone's distant barbecue. Ethan spotted Mara immediately. She sat on a bench near the swings, wearing dark jeans and a gray jacket, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders. She wasn't looking at her phone or reading a book, just sitting, watching the park activity with that same focused attention she'd directed at him in the coffee shop. "Is that her?" Sophie whispered, suddenly shy. "That's her." "She looks normal." "What were you expecting?" "I don't know, something different." Sophie gripped Ethan's hand tighter. "I'm scared, Daddy." "Me too, sweetheart. But sometimes the scary things are worth doing anyway." They approached the bench slowly, Sophie half hiding behind Ethan's legs. Mara looked up as they got close, and something shifted in her expression. Not the practiced smile of adults performing for children, but genuine nervousness mixed with hope. "Hi," Mara said, directing the word to Sophie rather than Ethan. "You must be Sophie. Your dad's told me a lot about you." Sophie peered out from behind Ethan's leg. "He told me about you too. He said you're his friend." "I am. I hope I can be your friend too if you want." "Maybe." Sophie stepped out slightly, evaluating Mara with the brutal honesty of 7-year-old assessment. "Do you like space?" "I love space. My favorite planet is Saturn because the rings are basically impossible and beautiful at the same time. Mine's Jupiter because it has the most moons, and it's really big, and it protects Earth from asteroids." Sophie took another step forward. "Did you know Jupiter is like Earth's bodyguard?" "I did know that. Did you know some of Jupiter's moons might have oceans under their ice? Europa might have twice as much water as Earth." Sophie's eyes went wide. "Could there be fish?" "Maybe not fish, but maybe something alive. Scientists are planning missions to find out." Just like that, the ice broke. Sophie moved fully out from behind Ethan, her fear temporarily overridden by her passion for space facts. Mara listened with what appeared to be genuine interest as Sophie launched into an explanation of why she wanted to be an astronaut and how many light years away the nearest star was and whether Mars colonization would happen in her lifetime. Ethan stood to the side, watching this interaction with a mix of relief and terror. Mara wasn't performing, she was engaging, asking follow-up questions, admitting when she didn't know something, treating Sophie like a person rather than a child to be patronized. "Can I show you the good swings?" Sophie asked suddenly. "They're the ones that go really high, and Daddy gets nervous, but I'm careful." "I'd love to see them. Lead the way." Sophie grabbed Mara's hand with the unself-conscious ease of children who've decided someone is safe, and Ethan's heart clenched at the gesture. Mara looked briefly surprised, but didn't pull away, letting Sophie tow her toward the swing set while chattering about proper swing technique and whether it was possible to swing high enough to go upside down. Ethan followed at a distance, giving them space while keeping them in sight. He found an empty bench and sat, watching as Sophie demonstrated her swinging abilities, pumping her legs with determination, her hair flying out behind her, laughing that full-body laugh that made everything else worth it. Mara stood nearby, not hovering but present, calling out encouragement and observations. "That's impressive height. What's your record?" and Sophie would shout back answers between arc of the swing, completely in her element. After 20 minutes of swinging, Sophie demanded they move to the monkey bars, then the climbing structure, then the spinning thing that made Ethan dizzy just watching. Mara kept up, never checking her phone, never showing impatience, never suggesting they slow down or move on. At one point, Sophie attempted a climbing route that was slightly beyond her skill level. She got halfway up, panicked, and froze. Ethan started to stand, but Mara was already there. "You're okay," Mara said calmly, positioning herself below Sophie without touching her. "Look at me, Sophie. You're okay. Do you want to come down or keep going?" "I'm stuck." Sophie's voice was small, frightened. "You're not stuck. You're just scared. Those are different things." "What if I fall?" "Then I'm right here to catch you, but I don't think you're going to fall. I think you're going to take one more step and then one more, and then you'll be at the top." Sophie looked down at Mara, then at the next handhold, then back at Mara. "You promise you'll catch me?" "I promise." Sophie took a shaky breath and reached for the next hold, then another. Then she was at the top, triumphant and terrified and proud all at once. "I did it." "You did it," Mara confirmed. "Now comes the fun part, getting down." Sophie descended with more confidence, and when she reached the ground, she surprised them both by throwing her arms around Mara's waist. "Thank you for not making me come down." Mara's expression flickered with something raw and unguarded before she carefully returned the hug. "Thank you for trusting me." Ethan felt his throat tighten. He'd been so focused on whether Mara would be good for Sophie that he hadn't considered what Sophie might give Mara, the chance to be needed, to be trusted, to matter in that complete way she'd described wanting. The afternoon stretched on. They explored the park, fed ducks at the pond with bread Sophie had smuggled from home, and eventually ended up back at the bench where they'd started. Sophie sat between Ethan and Mara, swinging her legs and talking about everything and nothing with the stream of consciousness intensity of a 7-year-old who'd decided these adults were safe. "I made you a drawing," Sophie announced suddenly, pulling a folded piece of paper from her pocket. "It's not very good, but Daddy said you might like it anyway." She handed it to Mara with the particular vulnerability of artists sharing new work. Mara unfolded it carefully, and Ethan caught a glimpse of the image, Sophie's characteristic stick figures, but these were standing on what appeared to be Saturn's rings surrounded by stars and planets. "This is us in space," Sophie explained. "That's you, and that's me, and that's Daddy. We're exploring Saturn's moons looking for alien fish." Mara stared at the drawing for a long moment, her expression carefully controlled. "This is beautiful, Sophie. Can I keep it?" "Really? You want to keep it?" "Really? I'm going to put it somewhere special where I can see it every day." Sophie beamed, then suddenly looked shy again. "Are you going to keep being Daddy's friend?" The question hung in the cold air. Mara looked at Ethan, something passing between them that Sophie couldn't interpret, then turned back to the child beside her. "I'd like to be, if that's okay with you." "Will you come back to the park again?" "If you want me to." Sophie thought about this seriously. "I want you to. But only if you promise not to lie about liking space just to make me like you. Emma's mom does that, and I can tell she doesn't really care about Jupiter's moons." Mara smiled, a real smile, warm and genuine. "I promise I actually like space. I promise I won't pretend to be interested in things I'm not. And I promise if I ever get bored with Saturn's rings, I'll tell you honestly." "Okay. Then you can come back." Sophie hopped off the bench. "Can I go on the swings one more time before we leave?" "Go ahead, sweetheart," Ethan said. Sophie raced toward the swings, leaving Ethan and Mara alone for the first time since they'd arrived. The silence stretched between them, heavy with everything unsaid. "She's amazing," Mara said finally, still looking at the drawing in her hands. "Funny and smart and so earnest it hurts. She likes you." "I like her. A lot. More than I expected to." Mara folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into her jacket pocket. "This is real, isn't it? This could actually work." "Maybe, if we don't screw it up." "When do I see her again?" Ethan watched Sophie swinging in the distance, her purple sweatshirt bright against the gray afternoon. "Soon, but we need to build slowly. Let her set the pace." "I can do slow." Mara turned to face him. "Thank you for this. For trusting me with her. Thank you for showing up. for being real with her. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Sophie swing higher and higher, her laughter carrying across the playground. For the first time since Christmas night, Ethan felt something loosen in his chest. Not quite hope, but close. The possibility that maybe this strange arrangement might become something solid. Over the next 6 weeks, Mara became a regular presence in their lives. She came to the park every Saturday, then started joining them for weekend breakfasts at the diner Sophie loved. She helped with homework when Sophie got stuck on math problems, explaining fractions with the same patient clarity she'd used for space facts. She showed up at Sophie's school science fair and spent an hour listening to 7-year-olds explain their projects with genuine interest. She never tried too hard, never performed enthusiasm she didn't feel. When Sophie showed her a drawing Mara didn't understand, she asked questions instead of offering empty praise. When Sophie had a meltdown about wearing shoes, Mara didn't try to fix it, just sat nearby reading while Ethan handled it, present but not intrusive. "She's good at this," Marcus observed one evening when he and Claire came over for dinner. They were in the kitchen while Mara and Sophie built something elaborate with wooden blocks in the living room. "I was skeptical, I'll admit. The whole marriage proposal to a stranger thing seemed unhinged, but watching her with Sophie, she's natural." "She's honest," Ethan corrected. "That's different from natural." "It's better," Claire said, chopping vegetables with practiced efficiency. "Sophie needs honest more than she needs perfect. Every other woman you've dated has tried to be the fairy tale stepmom. Mara's just herself." Through the doorway, they could see Mara and Sophie debating the structural integrity of their tower. Sophie wanted to go higher. Mara was explaining why the base needed reinforcement first. Neither was backing down, but both were listening. "Are you in love with her?" Claire asked bluntly. Ethan considered the question. He liked Mara, respected her, felt comfortable around her in a way he hadn't felt with anyone since Sarah. But love? That seemed like the wrong word for what they were building. "I care about her," he said finally. "I trust her with Sophie. I want her in our lives." "Is that love?" "Love has a lot of definitions," Marcus said diplomatically. "Maybe you're building the kind that lasts instead of the kind that burns out fast." 3 weeks later, the school held its annual art exhibition. Every student contributed a piece to be displayed in the gymnasium, and families were invited to walk through and celebrate their children's creativity. Sophie had been working on her project for a month in her after-school art class, but she'd refused to show Ethan what she'd made. "It's a surprise," she'd said whenever he asked. "You'll see it with everyone else." The gymnasium was packed with parents and siblings and grandparents, all crowding around tables covered in paintings and sculptures and collages. Ethan found Sophie's display easily, a large poster board with her name written at the top in careful letters. The drawing took his breath away. It showed their house in Sophie's characteristic style, but the details were what mattered. In the window, 3 figures were visible, one tall with glasses, clearly Ethan, one small with dark curly hair, Sophie, and one with red-brown hair and green eyes, unmistakably Mara. Above the house, Sophie had written in rainbow letters, "My new family." Ethan stood frozen, staring at the image while emotions he couldn't name crashed through him. Pride that Sophie felt secure enough to claim this new structure. Terror that she'd made it public before anything was certain. Grief that Sarah's ghost was truly being replaced. Hope that maybe, finally, they were building something real. "Daddy, do you like it?" Sophie appeared at his elbow, bouncing with nervous energy. "I made it in art class. Mrs. Henderson said it was beautiful." "Do you think it's beautiful?" "It's perfect, sweetheart," he managed. "When did you make this?" "Last week. Mara helped me get the colors right. I wanted her hair to look real." "Mara saw this?" "She picked me up from art class on Wednesday, remember? When you had that late meeting? I showed her and she said it was wonderful, and she got all quiet like she does when she's feeling things she doesn't want to talk about." Of course Mara had seen it. Of course she'd known what Sophie was claiming, what weight the child was placing on their fragile arrangement. "There you are!" Claire's voice cut through his spiral. She appeared with Marcus and their kids, all of them carrying paper plates of cookies from the refreshment table. "Sophie, your drawing is gorgeous. You're so talented." "Thanks, Aunt Claire. Did you see how I made Daddy's glasses shiny? That was the hardest part." While Sophie explained her artistic process to Claire, Marcus moved closer to Ethan, his expression concerned. You okay, man? You look like you've seen a ghost. She called us a family, in public, in front of the whole school. Is that not what you are? I don't know what we are. We're three people trying something that makes no sense. We're not... He gestured helplessly at the drawing. This is a lot of pressure for something that might not work. Or it's a 7-year-old claiming what she wants, which is actually pretty healthy. Marcus studied the drawing. She's happy, Ethan. Happier than I've seen her since Sarah died. Isn't that what matters? Before Ethan could answer, a familiar voice came from behind them. I thought I might find you here. He turned. Mara stood a few feet away, wearing slacks and a blazer that suggested she'd come straight from work. Her hair was pulled back, her expression carefully neutral, but her eyes went immediately to Sophie's drawing. You came! Sophie shrieked, abandoning Claire to throw herself at Mara. I didn't think you'd make it. You said you had meetings. I did have meetings. I left early. Mara hugged Sophie back, her gaze still fixed on the poster board. I wanted to see your art. Do you like it? Is it okay that I put you in it? Mrs. Henderson said I should draw my family, and you're part of our family now, so I drew you too. Is that okay? The gymnasium seemed to go quiet around them, though objectively nothing had changed. Parents still milled around, children still ran between tables. The PTA still sold cookies at an exorbitant markup. But in their small bubble, everything hung suspended on Mara's answer. It's more than okay, Mara said softly. It's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever made for me. Sophie beamed, then ran off to show her other friends their artwork, leaving the adults standing in awkward silence. I should have warned you, Mara said to Ethan. When I picked her up Wednesday, she showed me, asked if it was okay to call me family. I told her that families are about choice, not biology, and if she chose me, I'd be honored. You said that to a 7-year-old? She's smart enough to understand, and she deserved an honest answer. Mara moved closer to the drawing, studying it with the same focused attention she gave everything. This is what you were afraid of, isn't it? That she'd get attached before we were sure. Yes. Are we sure now? Ethan looked at the drawing, at the 3 figures in the window, the rainbow letters, the careful detail Sophie had poured into representing their fractured, functional, chosen family. He thought about the past 6 weeks, about Saturday mornings and homework help, and the easy way Mara had integrated into their chaos without trying to fix or change it. I don't know, he admitted. Are you? Mara was quiet for a long moment. Then she turned to face him fully, her green eyes serious and searching. I'm sure I want this. I'm sure Sophie matters to me more than I expected. I'm sure that walking away now would break something I don't want broken. She paused. I'm not sure I'm doing it right. I'm not sure I won't screw it up, but I'm sure I want to keep trying. That's terrifying. That's honest. Around them, the art exhibition continued its cheerful chaos. A child cried because they dropped their cookie. A teacher made announcements about upcoming school events. Marcus and Claire drifted away to give them privacy, taking their kids to see other artwork. Someone's here, a cold voice said from behind them. Ethan turned. Amanda Richardson stood 3 feet away, holding a glass of punch and an expression of barely concealed disdain. Amanda had been Sarah's closest friend. They'd taught at the same school, shared a classroom for student teachers, spent countless evenings planning lessons and laughing about teaching disasters. After Sarah's death, Amanda had helped with Sophie, brought casseroles Ethan never ate, and slowly drifted away as his grief proved too uncomfortable to witness. Amanda. Hi. Ethan felt his stomach clench. I didn't know you'd be here. My niece is in Sophie's class. I came to support her. Amanda's gaze moved to Mara with obvious assessment. I saw Sophie's drawing. Very decisive. Amanda, this is Mara. Mara, this is Amanda Richardson. She was Sarah's best friend. Was, Amanda repeated with a tight smile. Past tense. Though I doubt Sarah would recognize her family now. The words hit like a slap. Mara's expression went carefully blank, and Ethan felt anger surge through him, hot and protective and long overdue. That's not fair, he said, his voice low but firm. Isn't it? Sarah's been gone 3 years and you've already replaced her? Already found someone new to play mommy to her daughter? Amanda's voice rose slightly, drawing attention from nearby parents. I thought you loved her. I thought what you had was special. I did love her. I do love her. But she's dead, Amanda. And I'm not. And Sophie's not. We don't get to stop living because Sarah did. So you move on to the first woman who shows interest? You let your daughter call her family before Sarah's even cold in the ground? Sarah's been gone for 3 years, Ethan said, his voice shaking now. I've been alone for 3 years. I've been trying to hold together a 7-year-old who lost her mother and a life that fell apart and a grief that never stops. And when someone finally saw us, really saw us, and didn't run, I decided maybe that was worth exploring. I don't expect you to understand that, but I do expect you to respect it. Amanda's eyes filled with tears. She was my best friend. Doesn't that mean anything? It means everything. It means I know how much Sarah loved you and how much you loved her. But it doesn't mean we stop existing because she's not here to see it. Is this really what you want? Some stranger playing house with Sarah's daughter? Ethan felt Mara stiffen beside him, and something protective surged through his chest. She's not a stranger. She's not playing house. And she's not replacing anyone. She's Mara. She's herself. And yes, this is what I want. The words came out with more certainty than he'd felt before saying them. Amanda stared at him, tears spilling down her cheeks, her expression a mix of betrayal and grief, and something that might have been understanding buried deep beneath the pain. I hope you know what you're doing, she said finally, her voice breaking. Then she turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd of families and artwork. Ethan stood frozen, his heart pounding, aware that nearby parents were pretending not to have witnessed the confrontation. Mara was silent beside him, her hands clenched at her sides. I'm sorry, he said quietly. I'm so sorry you had to... You called me Mara, she interrupted, her voice strange. Not your friend, not someone you're seeing, just Mara. Yourself. What? You defended me as myself, not as a replacement, not as a placeholder, as a person who matters. She looked at him with something raw in her expression. No one's ever done that before. Of course you matter. Ethan stopped, awareness crashing through him. You thought I'd choose Sarah's memory over you. I thought you'd protect Sophie by keeping me at arm's length. I thought when it came down to it, I'd be the outsider you could sacrifice to make others comfortable. You're not an outsider, not anymore. Mara's eyes shone with unshed tears. I should go. This is Sophie's night, and I've caused enough drama. Don't. Ethan caught her hand without thinking. Please don't go. Sophie will want you here. I want you here. You just called me your friend in front of your wife's best friend. You panicked. You tried to minimize what this is. I was wrong. I was scared, and I defaulted to safe language. But I meant what I said after, you're not replacing anyone. You're Mara. You're important. He struggled to find the right words. Your family. If Sophie can claim it in rainbow letters, I can say it out loud. The tears spilled over, tracking down Mara's cheeks in silent streams. I'm not good at this, at being vulnerable, at believing people mean what they say. I know. Me neither. Ethan squeezed her hand gently. But I'm trying, and I need you to try too. Can you do that? Mara nodded, swiping at her tears with her free hand. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for assuming the worst. I'm sorry for being so ready to run. I'm sorry for giving you reasons to doubt. I'm sorry for being afraid to claim this publicly. Sophie appeared out of nowhere, her face concerned. Why is Mara crying? Did someone hurt her? I'll tell Mrs. Henderson. I'm okay, sweetheart, Mara managed, crouching down to Sophie's level. Sometimes people cry when they're happy too. Are you happy? Very happy. Your drawing is the best gift I've ever received. Sophie studied her with that unnervingly perceptive 7-year-old gaze. That lady was mean to you. I heard her. She said you were playing house. Some people have a hard time with change, Ethan said carefully. Well, she's wrong. You're not playing. You're real. Sophie grabbed Mara's hand and Ethan's hand, linking them together. You're our family, and anyone who can't see that is dumb. Sophie, we don't call people dumb, Ethan said automatically. Okay, they're chronologically challenged in their understanding of modern family structures. Mara laughed through her tears. Where did you learn that phrase? I made it up. Is it good? It's perfect. They spent another hour at the art exhibition, walking through the displays with Sophie's running commentary, eating overpriced cookies, and pretending the confrontation with Amanda hadn't happened. But something had shifted. Some boundary had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. That night, after Sophie was in bed, Ethan and Mara sat on the couch in the living room with the careful distance of people still figuring out physical proximity. The TV played some documentary neither was watching. I panicked, Ethan said finally. When Amanda confronted us, I panicked and tried to make you smaller to make her more comfortable. That was wrong. You were protecting Sophie from judgment. I was protecting myself from facing how real this has become. He turned to look at her. Sophie drew you into our family. Amanda forced me to defend you as part of it, and somewhere in there it stopped being an experiment and became something I don't want to lose. Mara was quiet, her expression unreadable in the dim light. I've been keeping an emotional escape route open, just in case, ready to pull back if it got too complicated or if I screwed up too badly. But watching Sophie claim me today, hearing you defend this as real, I don't want the escape route anymore. What do you want? This, messy and complicated and public. I want Saturday mornings and homework help and art exhibitions where 7-year-olds declare me family. I want to be part of something that matters more than my bank account or my company's valuation. Ethan felt his chest tighten with something that might have been hope or might have been terror. We're really doing this? Committing to this? Unless you've changed your mind. I haven't changed my mind. I'm terrified we'll screw it up, but I haven't changed my mind. Mara shifted closer, closing the careful distance between them. Then let's be terrified together. She leaned her head on his shoulder, a gesture of trust that felt more intimate than any kiss. Ethan wrapped his arm around her, and they sat there in the quiet of his living room, watching the unwatched documentary and feeling the weight of commitment settling around them like snow. Upstairs, Sophie slept with Mara's drawing tucked under her pillow, her question mark finally filled with something solid. And in that moment, broken pieces began to look less like damage and more like the foundation of something new. 3 months passed in a rhythm that felt almost normal. Mara spent most evenings at their house, helping Sophie with homework while Ethan cooked dinner, or reading beside her on the couch while Sophie built elaborate structures with blocks. She kept a toothbrush in their bathroom, spare clothes in Ethan's closet, her laptop charger permanently plugged in beside the kitchen table. The boundaries between visiting and living had blurred so gradually that no one could pinpoint when it happened. Sophie flourished. Her teacher reported improved focus in class, more confidence in social situations, genuine happiness that had been absent since Sarah's death. She talked about Mara constantly. What Mara said about constellations, how Mara explained why prime numbers were special, the way Mara didn't get upset when Sophie made mistakes but just helped her try again. She's good for both of you, Marcus observed one Saturday afternoon while watching a Little League game Sophie had no interest in playing but loved to watch. Mara sat in the bleachers beside Sophie, explaining batting averages and statistics with the same enthusiasm she brought to space facts. I was wrong to doubt this arrangement. You weren't wrong to doubt it. It's insane. Ethan watched Mara laugh at something Sophie said, her whole face lighting up in a way he'd never seen in those first careful weeks. But insane doesn't mean wrong. Are you going to marry her? The question should have felt premature, but their entire relationship had been backwards from the start. Marriage proposal before first date, commitment before chemistry, family integration before falling in love. I think so. Eventually. When we're ready. When will that be? Ethan didn't have an answer. They existed in comfortable limbo, committed enough to build routines, but not enough to make permanent promises. It worked. It felt safe. And safety, after 3 years of grief and rejection, seemed like enough. But then April arrived with cherry blossoms and longer days and a school event that shattered their careful equilibrium. Sophie's class was performing a spring showcase, a combination of songs, poetry readings, and short skits meant to celebrate the season and torture parents with off-key singing and forgotten lines. Sophie had been practicing for weeks, memorizing a poem about flowers that she recited constantly around the house. You're both coming, right? She'd asked repeatedly. Both of you? Together? Both of us, Ethan confirmed. Together. The showcase was scheduled for Thursday evening in the school auditorium. Ethan left work early, picked up Sophie from after-school care, and drove home to find Mara already there, having rearranged her entire schedule to make the 6 o'clock start time. "I'm so nervous," Sophie announced, spinning in circles in her bedroom. "What if I forget the words? What if I trip on stage? What if everyone laughs at me?" "Then we'll laugh with you and remind you that making mistakes is part of being human," Mara said, helping Sophie into her dress, a pale yellow thing with white flowers that Sarah had bought before she died. Sophie only wore it for special occasions, and the sight of it always made Ethan's chest tighten. They arrived at the school 30 minutes early to claim good seats. The auditorium filled quickly with parents wielding phones and cameras, grandparents carrying flowers, younger siblings already bored and restless. Ethan spotted several families he recognized from Sophie's class, along with teachers and staff he'd seen at various school functions. And then he saw Amanda Richardson. She stood near the back with her sister and niece, her expression carefully neutral when their eyes met across the crowded space. They hadn't spoken since the art exhibition 3 months ago. No apology, no reconciliation, just mutual avoidance of a wound neither knew how to heal. "Is that her?" Mara asked quietly, following his gaze. "Sarah's friend?" "Yeah, let's just ignore her. Tonight's about Sophie." But ignoring became impossible when Amanda's niece performed her poetry reading directly before Sophie's. Amanda moved to the front row to take photos, which meant she was standing only feet away when Sophie took the stage, small and bright in her yellow dress, clutching index cards with her poem, written in careful 7-year-old handwriting. Sophie found them in the audience, Ethan and Mara sitting side by side in the third row, and her entire face lit up. She waved enthusiastically, unselfconsciously, the way children do before they learn to be embarrassed by their own joy. "Hi, Daddy! Hi, Mara!" Her voice carried through the auditorium's microphone, and several parents chuckled at her enthusiasm. The teacher gently redirected Sophie to her poem, and she began reciting with exaggerated expression and dramatic hand gestures she'd clearly been practicing. She didn't forget a single word. Her voice stayed strong even when another child started crying in the audience. She was perfect. When she finished, the audience applauded, and Sophie took an elaborate bow before running off stage, her yellow dress swirling around her knees. Ethan felt pride swell in his chest so intensely it hurt. Beside him, Mara was blinking rapidly, her eyes suspiciously bright. "She was amazing," Mara whispered. "She really was." The showcase continued with more poems, songs about spring rain and growing gardens, a group dance that dissolved into giggly chaos when half the kids forgot the choreography. Parents filmed everything. Teachers looked simultaneously proud and exhausted, and the evening felt like hundreds of other school events, ordinary and sweet and completely forgettable, except to the families who loved these specific children. Afterward, parents and students milled in the hallway outside the auditorium, congratulating each other and taking photos. Sophie found them immediately, launching herself at Mara first in a move that had become natural over the past months. "Did you see me? Did I do good? I didn't forget any words." "You were brilliant," Mara said, hugging her back. "Best performance of the night." "You have to say that. You're my—" Sophie stopped, suddenly shy. "You're my Mara." Something passed across Mara's face. Surprise, tenderness, a flicker of that raw vulnerability she worked so hard to hide. "I'm your Mara, and you're my Sophie, and you were absolutely brilliant." "Can we get ice cream to celebrate, please?" Daddy said maybe if I did good. "I said we'd see," Ethan corrected, but he was already mentally conceding. "But yes, ice cream sounds—" "Ethan!" Amanda's voice cut through the celebration like a knife. She stood a few feet away, her expression a complicated mix of emotions Ethan couldn't fully read. "Can I talk to you? Privately?" The hallway noise seemed to fade. Sophie pressed closer to Mara's leg, suddenly wary. Mara's hand found Sophie's shoulder in a protective gesture that had become instinctive. "I don't think that's a good idea," Ethan said carefully. "Please, just for a minute. I won't make a scene." Amanda glanced at Mara. "I owe you both an apology." Mara looked at Ethan, leaving the decision to him. Sophie tugged on her hand, clearly unhappy with this development. "Okay," Ethan said finally. "1 minute." He followed Amanda to a quieter corner of the hallway, while Mara stayed with Sophie, already redirecting the child's attention to photos on her phone of the performance. Amanda's sister collected her niece and drifted away, giving them privacy. "I was horrible to you," Amanda said without preamble. "At the art exhibition, I said things that were cruel and unfair, and I've been avoiding you ever since because I didn't know how to take them back." "Okay." "Sarah was my best friend. When she died, I felt like I lost part of myself, and watching you move on, watching you build something new with someone else, it felt like you were erasing her, like everything she was, everything we shared, none of it mattered anymore." "It all mattered. It still matters. I know that now. I've been watching you tonight, watching Sophie with Mara, and I finally see it." Amanda's voice cracked slightly. "She's happy, Ethan. Genuinely happy. Happier than she's been since Sarah died. And Mara, she's not trying to replace anyone. She's just loving your daughter the way Sarah would want someone to love her if Sarah couldn't be there." Ethan felt his throat tighten. "I miss her. Every single day. So does Sophie. But we can't stop living because Sarah's gone." "I know. I'm sorry for making you feel like you had to choose between honoring her memory and finding happiness again." Amanda wiped at her eyes. "For what it's worth, I think Sarah would like Mara. They're nothing alike, but Sarah always valued honesty and intelligence and people who showed up when it mattered. Mara does all of that." "Thank you for saying that. Will you tell her I'm sorry? For what I said at the art exhibition? I was grieving and angry, and I took it out on someone who didn't deserve it." "You can tell her yourself." They walked back to where Mara waited with Sophie, who was showing Mara something on her phone and talking animatedly. Amanda approached cautiously, and Mara's posture shifted, not defensive exactly, but wary. "I owe you an apology," Amanda said to Mara. "What I said at the art exhibition was unfair and cruel. You weren't playing house or replacing anyone. You were showing up for a child who needed you. I'm sorry for not seeing that sooner." Mara studied Amanda for a long moment, her expression carefully neutral. "Grief makes people say things they don't mean. I understand that. It's not an excuse." "No, but it's an explanation." Mara's voice softened slightly. "I can't imagine what it's like to lose a best friend, to watch her family continue without her. That must be incredibly painful." Amanda's eyes filled with tears. "It is. But watching Sophie tonight, seeing how confident and happy she is, I realized that Sarah would trade anything for Sophie to be okay, even her own memory. And Sophie is okay because of you." The words hung in the hallway, heavy with meaning. Around them, families continued their celebrations, oblivious to the reconciliation happening in their small corner. "Thank you," Mara said finally. "That means more than you know." Amanda nodded, then turned to Sophie. "You were wonderful tonight, sweetheart. Your mom would be so proud." Sophie's face got that complicated expression children wear when someone mentions their dead parent, part sadness, part confusion, part something else entirely. "I wish she could have seen it." "Me too, baby. Me too." Amanda said her goodbyes and drifted back toward her family, leaving them in the thinning crowd. Sophie grabbed both Ethan's and Mara's hands, swinging between them. "Can we get ice cream now? I was really good, and I deserve it." "You absolutely deserve it," Ethan agreed. They drove to the ice cream shop in Mara's car. She'd started driving them places more often, another small shift in their dynamic. Sophie chattered the entire way about the showcase, about which kids forgot their lines, about how the music teacher had complimented her projection. The ice cream shop was moderately crowded for a Thursday night. They claimed a booth near the window, Sophie between them, all three with their preferred flavors: Superman for Sophie, vanilla for Ethan, mint chocolate chip for Mara. "This is my favorite," Sophie announced, swinging her legs under the table. "Performing and then celebrating with ice cream. We should do this every week." "I don't think we can arrange a school showcase every week," Mara said, smiling. "Then I'll just perform for you at home. I can make up poems and everything." Sophie took a huge bite of ice cream, leaving rainbow traces on her upper lip. "Will you always come to my school things? Both of you?" "Always," Ethan promised without thinking. "What if you have work? What if there's an emergency?" "Then we'll do everything possible to be there anyway," Mara said. "And if we absolutely can't make it, we'll tell you ahead of time and make it up to you after." Sophie seemed satisfied with this answer. Emma's mom says her dad never comes to school things because he works too much. I'm glad you both come. They finished their ice cream in comfortable quiet, Sophie occasionally pointing out cars passing by the window or people walking past. The evening felt complete, perfect, the kind of ordinary moment that felt extraordinary in its simplicity. We should head home, Ethan said finally, checking his watch. School tomorrow. The drive back was quieter, Sophie fighting sleep in the back seat. By the time they pulled into Ethan's driveway, she was fully asleep, her head lolling against the window. I'll carry her, Mara offered, already unbuckling Sophie's seatbelt with practiced ease. She lifted Sophie gently, and the child instinctively wrapped her arms around Mara's neck, murmuring something unintelligible against her shoulder. Ethan unlocked the door and led them inside, up the stairs to Sophie's room where Mara laid her carefully on the bed. Together they removed Sophie's shoes, helped her into pajamas despite her half-asleep protests, and tucked her under the covers. Mara brushed Sophie's curls back from her face with a tenderness that made Ethan's chest ache. Sweet dreams, Sophie girl, Mara whispered. Love you, Mara, Sophie mumbled, already drifting back to sleep. Mara froze. Her hand stilled against Sophie's hair, her expression shifting through surprise to something raw and overwhelmed. She looked at Ethan with wide eyes, clearly uncertain how to respond. You can say it back, Ethan said quietly, if you mean it. I love you too, Sophie, Mara whispered, her voice breaking slightly. But Sophie was already asleep, breathing deeply and evenly, completely unaware of the weight of words she'd just spoken. They left her room carefully, pulling the door mostly closed, and stood in the hallway in the dim light from downstairs. Mara's hands were shaking. She said she loves me. She does. I wasn't prepared for that. I don't know what I thought, that we'd build to that gradually, that I'd have time to prepare. Love doesn't wait for preparation, Ethan said, pulling her into a hug, especially not with kids. They just feel it and say it. Mara buried her face against his shoulder, and he felt her shake with silent tears. What if I screw this up? What if I can't be what she needs? You already are what she needs. You show up, you listen, you're honest. That's everything. They stood there in the hallway for a long time, holding each other while Mara cried quietly against his shoulder, and Sophie slept peacefully down the hall, completely unaware that she'd just changed everything. 2 weeks later, Ethan's company announced mandatory attendance at their annual corporate retreat, 3 days in Seattle for team building, strategy sessions, and the kind of enforced social bonding that made introverts want to fake their own deaths. He tried every possible excuse to get out of it, but his boss was adamant. You haven't attended a single company event in 3 years, she said during their one-on-one meeting. I understand you've had personal circumstances, but this is part of your job. 3 days. Non-negotiable. Which meant leaving Sophie for 3 nights. He'd never been away from her that long since Sarah died. Marcus and Claire offered to take her, but Sophie had other ideas. Can I stay with Mara? She asked when Ethan explained the situation. Please, we can do science experiments and watch space documentaries and it'll be so fun. Ethan looked at Mara, who'd been sitting quietly on the couch during this conversation. Her expression was carefully neutral, giving him space to make the decision without pressure. Would that be okay with you? He asked. 3 full days? I know it's a lot. I'd love to, Mara said immediately. If Sophie wants that. I do. I totally want that. Please, Daddy. So it was decided. Ethan would leave Thursday morning and return Sunday afternoon. Mara would stay at the house with Sophie, managing school drop-offs and pickups, homework, meals, bedtime, all the minutiae of parenting he'd been handling alone for 3 years. The night before he left, Ethan lay in bed running through mental checklists. He'd written detailed instructions about Sophie's routines, her preferences, emergency contacts, where everything was kept. He'd stocked the kitchen with easy meals, laid out clothes for each day, made sure all homework was organized. You're overthinking this, Mara said from the doorway. She'd started sleeping over more often, though still maintaining her own apartment for appearances and her need for occasional solitude. We'll be fine. What if she has a nightmare and asks for me? Then I'll comfort her and call you so she can hear your voice. What if there's a problem at school? Then I'll handle it the same way you would, calmly and rationally. What if she realizes I'm gone and panics? Then we'll talk through her feelings together. Mara climbed into bed beside him. You're allowed to travel for work. You're allowed to trust me with your daughter. We've been building to this for months. I know, you're terrified something will go wrong and you won't be there to fix it. I understand that. But you can't be there for everything. Sometimes you have to trust that the support system you've built will hold. Ethan pulled her close, feeling her warmth against his side. When did you get so wise about parenting? I've been paying attention, learning from you, from Sophie, from all the mistakes I'm desperately trying not to make. They fell asleep wrapped around each other, and when Ethan's alarm went off at 5 the next morning for his early flight, Mara was already awake, making coffee and packing him breakfast for the airport. Sophie woke up just as his Uber arrived, stumbling downstairs in her pajamas to hug him goodbye. I'll miss you, Daddy, she said, squeezing tight. I'll miss you too, Sophie girl. Be good for Mara. I'm always good. You're always interesting, he corrected, earning a giggle. I love you, Infinity. Love you, Infinity +1. He kissed the top of her head, hugged Mara briefly, and forced himself out the door before his anxiety could sabotage the entire trip. The first day was fine. He checked in constantly, texts between meetings, calls during lunch, a video chat before Sophie's bedtime where she showed him a drawing she'd made. Mara sent updates. Sophie at school, Sophie at soccer practice, Sophie attempting to cook dinner and creating cheerful chaos in the kitchen. The second day started well. Ethan was in a morning session on client retention strategies when his phone buzzed with a text from Mara. Sophie's school called. She's in the nurse's office with a fever. I'm leaving work to get her now. He tried to call during the break, but it went to voicemail. He texted, How high is the fever? Should I come home? The response came 20 minutes later, 99.8. Not dangerous, but enough that school sent her home. She's asking for you, but I'm managing. Stay at your retreat. We're okay. Ethan tried to focus on the afternoon sessions, but couldn't. His mind conjured worst-case scenarios. The fever spiking, Sophie having a seizure, Mara panicking and making it worse. By 4 o'clock, he was seriously considering catching the next flight home when Mara sent a photo. Sophie on the couch wrapped in blankets, watching cartoons, looking miserable but not critical. Fever's down to 99.2. She had soup and crackers. She's stable. Stop worrying. I'm her father. Worrying is my job. And I'm here with her. Trust me to do mine. The third day was worse. Sophie's fever broke overnight, but she was clingy and emotional in the way sick children are. Mara sent updates. Sophie refusing to eat, Sophie crying about wanting her dad, Sophie asking repeatedly when he'd be home. By noon, Ethan was done. He excused himself from the final session, changed his flight to leave immediately, and texted Mara. Coming home early, landing at 3. I'll Uber from the airport. Her response was immediate. We're fine. You don't have to. I know. I want to. He made it home by 4:30, letting himself in quietly in case Sophie was sleeping. The house was silent except for the TV playing something animated in the living room. He found them on the couch. Sophie curled against Mara's side, both of them watching a cartoon about talking animals, a half-eaten bowl of soup on the coffee table. Daddy! Sophie scrambled up, then swayed slightly, still weak from being sick. Ethan caught her, holding her close while she clung to him like she hadn't seen him in months instead of days. Hey, sweetheart, I heard you weren't feeling well. I had a fever and my throat hurt and I missed you so much. The words tumbled out between sniffles. Mara took care of me, but it wasn't the same as you. Over Sophie's head, Ethan caught Mara's expression, relief mixed with something else. Hurt, maybe. Or resignation. I'm home now, he said, carrying Sophie back to the couch. You're okay. Everything's okay. Mara stood, gathering her things with careful, controlled movements. I should go. Give you two some space. You don't have to leave, Ethan said. I have work I need to catch up on anyway. She kissed Sophie's forehead. Feel better, sweetheart. You're leaving? Sophie's voice rose with distress. But you've been here the whole time. Your dad's home now. You don't need me anymore. The words hung in the air, loaded with more meaning than a simple statement about childcare coverage. Ethan caught the edge in Mara's voice, the careful blankness of her expression that he'd learned meant she was protecting herself from hurt. "Mara," he started, but she was already heading for the door. "We'll talk later. Take care of Sophie, that's what matters." She left quickly, the door closing with a soft click that felt somehow final. Sophie burrowed against Ethan's chest, already half asleep from exhaustion and lingering sickness. "Is Mara mad at me?" she mumbled. "No, sweetheart, she's not mad at you." "Then why did she leave?" "Because I came home early and made her feel replaceable," Ethan thought. "Because I panicked and didn't trust her to handle this. Because I proved exactly what she's always feared, that when it comes down to it, she'll always be second choice." "She had work to do," he said instead. "She'll be back soon." But even as he said it, he wasn't sure he believed it. Sophie fell asleep against him 20 minutes later, her fever completely gone, but her body still recovering. Ethan carried her upstairs to her bed, tucked her in, and then stood in her doorway staring at his phone. He'd hurt Mara. He'd rushed home like she was inadequate, like she couldn't handle their daughter, like she was just a temporary stand-in until the real parent returned. He'd done exactly what she'd warned him against, treated her as less essential, less permanent, less real. He called her. It went to voicemail. He texted, "I'm sorry. Can we talk?" The response came an hour later. "Not tonight. I need space to think." "Think about what?" "Whether I can keep doing this. Whether I'll ever be more than a convenient substitute." Panic seized his chest. "That's not what you are. You know that's not what you are." "Do I?" "You came home because Sophie was sick on my watch, because you didn't trust me to handle it, because when it matters most, I'm still just your friend Mara instead of Sophie's parent. That's not fair." "No." "But it's true." Ethan tried calling again, voicemail. He paced his bedroom, Sophie's soft breathing audible from down the hall, the house feeling enormous and empty, despite having his daughter home safe. He'd spent 3 years protecting Sophie from loss. 3 years building walls around their small family unit. 3 years being both mother and father, because the alternative meant trusting someone else to stay. And when someone finally did stay, when someone proved herself reliable and committed and irreplaceable, he'd panicked at the first real test and come running home like she was inadequate. His phone stayed silent through the evening, through Sophie waking up for water and reassurance, through the long night of lying awake, replaying every moment of the past 3 days, seeing his mistakes crystallize into sharp relief. By morning, Sophie's fever was completely gone, and she was demanding pancakes with her usual energy. Ethan made breakfast mechanically, checking his phone every 30 seconds for a message that didn't come. "Is Mara coming over today?" Sophie asked around a mouthful of pancake. "I don't think so, sweetheart." "Why not? Did I make her mad when I said I missed you?" "No, baby, you didn't do anything wrong." "Then why isn't she here?" "Because I broke something," Ethan thought. "Because I got scared and protective and I treated her like she was temporary when she's been proving she's permanent for 6 months. I need to talk to her," he said finally, "to apologize for something I did wrong." Sophie considered this seriously. "You should bring her flowers. On TV, when grown-ups mess up, they bring flowers." "Flowers might not be enough this time." "Then what do you bring?" Ethan looked at his daughter, at her dark curls and serious expression and complete faith that problems could be solved if you just tried hard enough. Honesty and a promise to do better. That sounds harder than flowers. It is. Much harder. That afternoon, after confirming Sophie was fully recovered and leaving her with Marcus and Claire, Ethan drove to Mara's apartment. He'd only been here a handful of times. She always came to them, always existed in their space rather than requiring they share hers. The building was modern and expensive, all glass and steel, and doormen who looked at him suspiciously when he asked to be buzzed up. "Is Ms. Lewis expecting you?" the doorman asked. "No, but please tell her Ethan's here. It's important." The doorman spoke quietly into his phone, then handed it to Ethan. Mara's voice came through, tight and controlled. "I said I needed space." "I know, but I can't leave things like this. Please, just 5 minutes." A long pause. "Fine. Come up." Her apartment was exactly what he expected. Minimalist furniture, expensive art, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of the city, everything perfectly arranged and carefully controlled just like Mara herself. She stood by the window when he entered, her arms crossed, her expression guarded. 5 minutes, she said. I'm sorry. For coming home early. For making you feel like you couldn't handle Sophie. For treating you like a substitute instead of a parent. You are her parent. You're her parent too. You've been parenting her for 6 months. You know her routines, her fears, her favorite books and least favorite foods. You comfort her when she's scared and celebrate with her when she's proud. You're not a substitute. You're essential. Mara's jaw tightened. Then why did you rush home the second she got sick? Why did you assume I couldn't handle it? Because I'm terrified. Because Sophie's all I have left of Sarah, and if something happened to her on someone else's watch, I'd never forgive myself. Because I've been the only one responsible for her for 3 years, and I don't know how to stop being hypervigilant. That's not about me being inadequate. That's about you not trusting anyone. You're right. It is. Ethan moved closer. And I need to work on that. I need to trust that you love her as much as I do, that you'll keep her safe, that you're not going to disappear the second things get hard. But you don't trust that. When it came down to it, you ran home like I was failing her. I was wrong. Sophie was fine. You were handling it perfectly. I panicked because I'm not used to sharing this responsibility, and I hurt you because I'm still learning how to let someone else matter this much. Mara turned away, looking out the window at the city stretching below. I can't keep being second choice, Ethan. I can't keep wondering if you'll ever really commit to this, or if you're just keeping me around until something better comes along. There is nothing better. There's just you, complicated and honest and perfect for us in ways I didn't know we needed. Then prove it. She turned back to face him, her green eyes bright with unshed tears. Stop treating me like a friend helping out. Stop introducing me as Sophie's mom's friend or your friend Mara. If I'm part of this family, actually make me part of it. Claim me, publicly, permanently. I will. When? After another 6 months of proving myself? After a year? After Sophie graduates high school? Her voice cracked. I've given you everything I have. I've rearranged my life around yours. I've loved your daughter like she's my own. And I'm still just the woman you're seeing. Just Mara. Never more than that. The accusation hit like a physical blow because it was true. He'd been holding back, keeping language vague, maintaining emotional distance even as their lives intertwined completely. You're right, he said quietly. I've been afraid to commit completely because committing means risking loss again, and I can't survive losing someone else I love. So you'd rather lose me slowly by never fully having me? I'd rather keep you at a distance I think I can survive. He moved closer, close enough to see the tears tracking down her cheeks. But that's cowardice. And it's not fair to you. You deserve someone who claims you without hesitation, who introduces you as family without qualifications, who trusts you completely instead of testing you constantly. I deserve someone who chooses me, Mara said, her voice breaking completely now. Not someone who keeps me around because I'm convenient or because I'm good with his kid. Someone who actually wants me, all of me, forever. I do want you, I'm just scared. I know, you've said that. But Ethan, I'm scared too. I'm terrified of screwing this up, of Sophie realizing I'm not her real mom, of you waking up one day and deciding this was all a mistake. But I show up anyway. I commit anyway. I love you both anyway, even though it's terrifying. The words hung between them. I love you, said out loud for the first time, in anger and pain and desperate honesty. You love me? Ethan asked. Of course I love you. How could I not? You're kind and devoted and you make terrible pancakes, but Sophie eats them anyway because she knows you're trying. You read her bedtime stories even when you're exhausted. You show up for every school event. You're the kind of father I dreamed my children would have. And watching you be that for Sophie has been both beautiful and heartbreaking. Heartbreaking. Because you give her everything, but you won't give yourself permission to be happy. You won't let me all the way in. You keep one foot out the door in case you need to run. Ethan closed the final distance between them, taking her face in his hands gently. I don't want to run. I want to stay. With you. Forever. I'm just so scared of losing someone else I love that I've been sabotaging the best thing that's happened to us in years. So stop sabotaging it. Choose me. Actually choose me. I choose you. The words came easier than he expected. I choose you and I love you, and I'm sorry it took me so long to say it out loud. Mara's tears fell harder now, but her expression shifted from hurt to something softer. Say it again. I love you, Mara Lewis. I love your honesty and your awkwardness with emotions and the way you explain prime numbers to my daughter like they're magic. I love how you show up even when it's hard. I love that you're teaching me how to trust again. I love you. She kissed him then, fierce and desperate, and full of 6 months of carefully restrained emotion finally breaking free. Ethan pulled her closer, tasting salt from her tears, feeling her shake in his arms. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Mara pressed her forehead against his. I need you to mean it, she whispered. Not just say it because I'm upset. Actually mean it. I mean it. I love you. I want you in our lives permanently. I want to stop calling you my friend and start calling you my partner, my family, the person I'm building a future with. Even though it's terrifying, especially because it's terrifying. The best things usually are. They stood wrapped around each other while the afternoon light faded outside, the city below starting to glow with evening lights. Ethan felt something shift in his chest, not the loosening of grief, but the expansion of space where new love could exist alongside old. Come home with me, he said finally. Sophie's at Marcus's until 6. Come home and let's figure out what comes next. Together. Mara nodded against his chest. Okay, but Ethan? Yeah? No more running home early when I'm taking care of her. No more assuming I can't handle it. If I need help, I'll ask. But you have to trust me to know when that is. I will, I promise. And no more vague introductions. I'm not just your friend. I'm your partner, your family. Sophie's... She paused, the word clearly difficult. Sophie's other parent, if that's what you want. That's exactly what I want. What we both want. That they gathered Mara's things, her laptop, a change of clothes, the drawing Sophie had given her months ago that she kept framed on her desk. The drive back to Ethan's house was quiet but not uncomfortable, the kind of silence that comes after difficult truths have been spoken and accepted. When they picked up Sophie from Marcus and Claire's, the child took one look at them and grinned. You fixed it, she announced. I knew you would. Adults always fix things when they actually talk about feelings. Where did you learn that? Mara asked, laughing despite herself. Claire told me. She said Daddy was being stupid, but you'd help him figure it out. Marcus looked sheepish. I may have said something similar, in different words. That night, after Sophie was in bed, Ethan and Mara sat on the couch in the spot that had become theirs, close together, Mara's head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist. I'm still going to screw up, he said quietly. I'm still going to panic sometimes. Still going to struggle with trusting this is real. I know. But now I know you'll try to do better. That's all I need. I love you. I love you too. She tilted her head to look at him. We're really doing this? Committing completely? No more holding back? We're really doing this. It's terrifying. It is, but we'll be terrified together. Mara smiled, that real smile he'd learned to treasure, and kissed him softly. Outside, the night settled over Portland with its usual gray drizzle, but inside their house, their shared house now, truly shared, everything felt warm and solid and permanent in a way it hadn't before. Broken pieces, learning to build something new. Not perfect, not without fear, but real and honest, and finally, fully committed to staying. 2 weeks after their confrontation, Mara officially moved in, not gradually, not tentatively, but with intention, hiring movers to bring her furniture, consolidating their belongings, turning the guest room into a home office they could share. Sophie helped unpack boxes with the enthusiasm of a child who finally had confirmation that the adult she loved wasn't disappearing. This is your drawer, Sophie announced, organizing Mara's socks with meticulous care. And this shelf is for your books. And Daddy said you can put your weird metal sculpture thing in the living room even though he thinks it's ugly. I never said ugly, Ethan called from downstairs where he was assembling Mara's desk. I said abstract. You made a face, Sophie called back. That means you think it's ugly, but you're being polite. Mara laughed, sitting on the floor surrounded by unpacked boxes. Your dad's allowed to have different taste in art. That's what makes relationships interesting. Are you guys in a relationship now? Like, official? Very official. Good. Emma's mom asked if you were Daddy's girlfriend, and I didn't know what to say because you're more than that, but I don't know the right word. Mara looked at this 7-year-old arranging socks by color, her dark curls falling into her face, her expression so earnest it hurt. What word would you use? Sophie thought about this seriously. Family. You're my family. Then that's the right word. They finished unpacking by evening, the house transformed into something that belonged to all three of them, rather than just Ethan and Sophie with Mara visiting. Her coffee mug sat beside his in the cabinet. Her toothbrush had a permanent place in the bathroom holder. Her laptop claimed half the desk in the office. Small changes that added up to something permanent. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Ethan found Mara standing in the living room staring at the metal sculpture she'd insisted on bringing, an abstract piece of twisted steel that caught the light in interesting ways. You really do think it's ugly, she said without turning around. I really do think it's abstract, he corrected, wrapping his arms around her from behind. But it's yours, which makes it belong here. Everything feels different now. More real. It is more real. We stopped pretending this was temporary. Mara leaned back against him. I'm still scared I'll wake up and this will have been some elaborate dream, that I'll be back in my apartment alone and you and Sophie will have been a beautiful hallucination. Not a hallucination, very real, very permanent, very much in love with you. She turned in his arms to face him. I love you too. Both of you. This whole chaotic, imperfect life we're building. They stood there in the quiet of their shared living room, the metal sculpture catching lamplight and throwing strange shadows on the walls, and everything felt exactly right. 3 months passed in the rhythm of routine, school mornings and work deadlines, weekend park visits and weeknight dinners, the ordinary magic of lives fully intertwined. Mara attended parent-teacher conferences and signed permission slips. Ethan learned to give her space when work stress made her quiet and internal. Sophie flourished with 2 adults who showed up consistently, who never competed but complemented each other's strengths. But Ethan knew something was still missing. They'd committed to each other, built a life together, but they'd never actually finished what started that Christmas night in the restaurant. The question that had launched everything still hung unanswered. In July, when Portland finally remembered how to be sunny, Ethan started planning. I need your help, he told Marcus over lunch one Thursday. I want to propose to Mara properly. Not just agree to her proposal from 6 months ago, but actually ask her myself. Marcus grinned. About time. What are you thinking? I want Sophie involved. This isn't just about Mara and me. It's about the 3 of us choosing to be a family. Sophie should be part of asking. Good instinct. What's the plan? Ethan pulled out his phone and showed Marcus the notes he'd been making. The restaurant where we met. Christmas decorations in July. I'll pay them to set it up. Sophie and I asked together, small, intimate, just the 3 of us. That's either incredibly romantic or completely insane. Probably both. Like everything else about our relationship. Marcus studied him seriously. Are you ready for this? Really ready? No more panic attacks about losing people or being vulnerable? I'll probably always be a little scared, but I'm more scared of not doing this. Of waiting until the perfect moment that never comes. Mara took a chance on me when I was a mess. Time to take a chance back. He talked to Sophie that evening while Mara worked late at the office. They sat in Sophie's room surrounded by her collection of space posters and models of the solar system, and Ethan explained what he wanted to do. I want to ask Mara to marry us. Not just me, us. Because this is about our whole family, not just 2 adults making decisions. Sophie's eyes went enormous. Really? We're going to be a real family with marriage and everything? We're already a real family. The marriage just makes it official. Will Mara be my mom? Like, actually, my mom? The question landed with all its complicated weight. Ethan chose his words carefully. Mara will be your parent. Your other parent. You already have a mom, your first mom, who loved you so much. Mara isn't replacing her. She's adding to our family. Can I call her mom, if I want to? That's something you and Mara should talk about together. Some kids call step-parents by their first name. Some say mom or dad. There's no wrong answer. Sophie thought about this, her face scrunched in concentration. I think I want to call her mom, but maybe Mom Mara? So it's different from my first mom? That sounds perfect. But remember, you should ask Mara first. Make sure she's comfortable with whatever you decide. Okay. Sophie bounced on her bed with excitement. When are we asking her? How are we asking her? Can I help plan it? Actually, I need you to help with something very specific. He explained his idea for the restaurant, for recreating that Christmas night, but transforming it into something joyful instead of painful. Sophie listened with intense focus, then nodded decisively. We need a ring, a really good one, and flowers, and I should make a speech about why Mara should marry us. I don't know about a speech. Daddy, this is important. We have to tell her all the reasons. Like, she's smart, and she explains things good, and she never gets mad when I ask a million questions, and she makes you smile in a way you didn't smile before. Ethan felt his throat tighten. Those are excellent reasons. They spent the next week planning in secret, whispering in corners when Mara was in the next room, making elaborate excuses for mysterious errands. Ethan bought a ring, simple, elegant, with an emerald stone the color of Mara's eyes. Sophie wrote her speech and practiced it approximately 400 times, each iteration getting longer and more elaborate. I think we should keep it shorter, Ethan suggested after the 15th practice run. Just the most important parts. But all the parts are important. Pick your top 3 reasons, the ones that matter most. Sophie revised her speech down to something she could deliver without notes, and they rehearsed together until it felt natural. Meanwhile, Ethan contacted Marcello's Italian restaurant and explained what he wanted. You want us to put up Christmas decorations in July? The manager asked, clearly baffled. I'll pay extra, significantly extra. This is where we met, where everything started. I want to bring it full circle. Money and sentimentality won out over seasonal appropriateness. The manager agreed to close the restaurant to other customers for one evening, to decorate with lights and garland, to recreate the atmosphere of that December night 7 months ago. The hard part was getting Mara there without raising suspicion. Ethan claimed a work dinner he couldn't miss, asked if she'd mind watching Sophie, then had Marcus call with an emergency requiring Mara's help with a tech problem at his house. I'm sorry, Ethan said when Mara protested about the timing. I know it's annoying. Can Sophie come with you to Marcus's? I'll meet you there after my dinner. Fine, but your work dinners are getting excessive. I know. This is the last one for a while, I promise. The night arrived warm and clear, one of those perfect Portland summer evenings where the sun set late and the air smelled like roses and possibility. Ethan picked up Sophie from her after-school program, and they drove to the restaurant together, both dressed up. Ethan in the same tie Sophie had helped him pick for that disastrous Christmas date, Sophie in the yellow dress from the spring showcase. I'm so nervous, Sophie said, clutching a bouquet of flowers they'd picked out together, wildflowers and daisies, nothing formal or pretentious. What if she says no? She won't say no. But what if she does? What if she thinks it's too fast or too weird or... Sophie. Ethan pulled into the parking lot and turned to face his daughter. Mara loves us. She moved in with us. She rearranged her whole life to be part of ours. She's not going to say no. Promise? I promise. They walked into the restaurant together, and Ethan felt his breath catch. The staff had transformed the space completely. White lights draped everywhere, garland wrapped around pillars, candles on every table. The pianist played soft jazz versions of Christmas songs, the same music that had been playing 7 months ago. It was absurd and beautiful and perfectly appropriate for their backwards relationship. The manager greeted them with a smile. Everything's ready. Your other guest should arrive in about 15 minutes. We'll bring her to your table when she gets here. Ethan and Sophie sat at the same corner booth where he'd been rejected, where Mara had sat at the next table and asked that impossible question. The ring box sat heavy in his jacket pocket. Sophie clutched her flowers and practiced her speech under her breath. You've got this, Sophie girl, Ethan said, squeezing her hand. Just speak from your heart. My heart is beating really fast. Mine too. 14 minutes later, the door opened. Mara walked in, clearly confused by the Christmas decorations and empty restaurant. She spotted them in the corner booth and her confusion deepened. What's going on? Marcus said there was a tech emergency, but she stopped, taking in the decorated restaurant, the formal clothes, the flowers Sophie held. What is this? It's a surprise, Sophie said, her voice shaking slightly. A good one. We promise. Mara approached slowly, her expression cycling through confusion to dawning realization to something that might have been hope or might have been fear. Sit down, Ethan said, gesturing to the seat across from them. Please, she sat, her hands trembling slightly as she placed them on the table. You recreated Christmas. I recreated the night we met. The night you asked me a question I didn't know how to answer. Ethan, let me finish, please. He took a breath, feeling Sophie's small hand squeeze his for courage. 7 months ago, I came here for a blind date. I was rejected before it started, humiliated in front of a restaurant full of strangers, ready to give up on ever finding someone who'd accept my daughter as part of the package. And then you asked if I could be your new husband. Mara's eyes were already shining with tears. I remember. I thought you were crazy. I thought the whole idea was insane, but I said yes anyway because you saw us, really saw us, and didn't run. You saw a single father and his daughter and thought we were worth taking a chance on. You were. You are. Sophie couldn't contain herself any longer. And now we want to take a chance on you, officially, with a ring and everything. Ethan pulled out the ring box, opened it to show the emerald stone catching candlelight, and slid out of the booth to kneel beside the table. Sophie scrambled out after him, still clutching her flowers. Mara Lewis, Ethan said, his voice steady despite his racing heart. You asked me 7 months ago if I could be your new husband. I'm asking you now if you'll be our family. Not just mine, but ours. Will you marry me and be Sophie's parent and build this weird, imperfect life with us permanently? And I have reasons, Sophie interrupted, then launched into her speech. You should say yes because you make my dad smile again and you explain space stuff without getting bored and you never lie even when the truth is hard and you stayed when everyone else left and you love us even though we're complicated and we love you so much it feels like my heart might explode and I want to call you mom if that's okay and please, please, please say yes. The words tumbled out in one breathless rush and by the end Sophie was crying and Mara was crying and Ethan was doing his best not to cry but failing spectacularly. Mara looked between them, this man who'd learned to trust again, this child who'd opened her heart to someone new, and something broke open in her expression. All the careful control she usually maintained shattered, leaving only raw, overwhelming emotion. Yes, she whispered. Yes to all of it. Yes to being your family and marrying you and being Sophie's parent and building this life together. Yes. Sophie shrieked and threw herself at Mara, nearly knocking her off the booth seat. Ethan slid the ring onto Mara's shaking hand, then wrapped his arms around both of them, and they stayed there in a tangled, crying, laughing embrace while the pianist played on and the fake Christmas lights twinkled overhead. I can call you Mom? Sophie asked, pulling back just enough to see Mara's face. For real? For real, Mara managed through tears. If you want to, Mom, Mara, or just Mara, or whatever feels right. I'm yours either way. Mom, Mara, Sophie decided firmly, because you're my second mom, and that's special and different, and I love you. I love you too, Sophie. So much. They stayed at the restaurant for another hour, eating dinner the staff had prepared, talking about wedding plans and how to tell people and what came next. Sophie wanted to invite everyone she'd ever met. Mara wanted something small and private. Ethan just wanted to make it official as soon as legally possible. What about the courthouse, Mara suggested. Small ceremony, immediate family and close friends, nothing elaborate. Can I wear my yellow dress? Sophie asked. You can wear whatever you want. And can we have cake? We have to have cake. We'll definitely have cake. They decided on a date 3 months away, October, when the leaves turned and the air got crisp, and Portland remembered how to be beautiful. Just immediate family, a handful of friends, a simple ceremony that focused on what mattered. 3 people choosing each other, committing to something permanent built on honesty instead of fantasy. The drive home felt surreal. Mara's ring catching streetlight, Sophie chattering about wedding plans from the back seat, the night warm and perfect and full of possibility. When they got home, Sophie made them all hot chocolate, even though it was summer, and they sat on the couch together, Mara in the middle with Sophie curled against one side and Ethan on the other. "This is my favorite," Sophie announced. "All of us together, our family." "Mine too," Mara said softly, kissing the top of Sophie's head. Ethan pulled them both closer, feeling the weight of commitment and the lightness of finally, fully choosing joy over fear. They'd built this strange family from rejection and loneliness and desperate honesty, and somehow it had become real. The next 3 months passed in a blur of quiet preparation. They told Marcus and Claire, who celebrated with champagne and unsurprising smugness about having been right all along. They told Sophie's school, updating emergency contacts and parent information. They told Mara's company board, who seemed relieved their CEO's personal life was finally stable. Ethan called Amanda Richardson and invited her to the wedding. The conversation was stilted and uncomfortable, but she accepted with something that sounded like genuine happiness. "Sarah would want this for Sophie," she said, "for both of you. I'm glad you found each other." Sophie threw herself into wedding preparations with 7-year-old intensity, making decorations and planning seating charts and insisting on making a speech at the reception. "You already gave a speech when we proposed," Ethan reminded her. "That was the proposal speech. This is the wedding speech. They're different." "How many speeches are you planning?" "As many as it takes to tell everyone how great Mom Mara is." Mara, overhearing this, looked like she might cry again. She'd been crying easily lately. Happy tears, overwhelmed tears, tears that came from finally believing this was real and permanent and not going to disappear. October arrived with perfect autumn weather. The ceremony was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon at a small venue overlooking the Willamette River, with a reception in the same space immediately following. 20 guests, Marcus and Claire with their kids, a few of Mara's colleagues, some of Ethan's work friends, Sophie's teacher Mrs. Patterson, and Amanda Richardson sitting quietly in the back row. Sophie served as the flower girl and junior bridesmaid and self-appointed coordinator, making sure everyone knew where to sit and when to be quiet. She wore her yellow dress with white flowers, her dark curls pulled back with a clip Mara had bought her specially for the occasion. Ethan stood at the front with the officiant, watching the small crowd settle into their seats, and felt Marcus nudge him from behind where he stood as best man. "You ready for this?" Marcus whispered. "More ready than I've ever been for anything." The music started, something simple and instrumental, nothing traditional or expected. And then Mara appeared at the back of the space, and Ethan's breath caught in his chest. She wore a simple dress in deep green that matched her eyes, her auburn hair loose around her shoulders, carrying a small bouquet of the same wildflowers Sophie had brought to the proposal. She wasn't performing elegance or bridal perfection. She was just Mara, walking toward them with a smile that held 7 months of building trust and learning to believe in permanent things. Sophie met her halfway down the aisle, taking her hand and walking with her the rest of the way. Not giving her away, joining together. 3 people becoming a family officially instead of just in practice. The ceremony was short and simple. The officiant talked about chosen family and commitment and the courage it takes to trust again after loss. Mara and Ethan exchanged vows they'd written themselves, promises about showing up and being honest and loving each other through fear and uncertainty. "I promise to never pretend emotions I don't feel," Mara said, her voice steady despite the tears tracking down her face. "I promise to show up even when it's hard. I promise to love Sophie as my own and honor the mother who came before me. I promise to be your partner in all the ways that matter." "I promise to trust you completely," Ethan said. "I promise to claim you proudly and publicly. I promise to never make you feel like a substitute or second choice. I promise to build this life with you and Sophie and whatever chaos comes our way." They exchanged rings, Mara's engagement ring joined by a simple band, Ethan's ring identical in style. And then the officiant said something about the power vested in them and pronouncing them married, and they kissed while Sophie cheered and the small gathering applauded. But before they could walk back down the aisle, Sophie stepped forward and cleared her throat importantly. "Wait, I have something to say." The officiant smiled and stepped back, giving her the floor. Sophie looked at the assembled guests with complete confidence. "Most people think families are just people who are related by blood," she announced. "But that's not true. Families are people who choose each other and love each other and show up even when it's hard. Mom Mara chose us, and we chose her, and now we're a real family forever. And I just wanted everyone to know that this is the best thing that ever happened to us. Thank you for coming. There's cake in the back." The gathering laughed and wiped tears, and Sophie looked enormously pleased with herself. Mara crouched down to Sophie's level and pulled her into a tight hug. "Thank you for choosing me," Mara whispered. "Thank you for staying," Sophie whispered back. The reception was casual and joyful. Cake and champagne and Sophie running around with Marcus and Claire's kids while adults talked and laughed and celebrated the strange family that had built itself from broken pieces. Amanda approached during the cake cutting, her expression cautious but warm. "Congratulations," she said to Mara. "I was wrong about you. You're exactly what they needed." "Thank you for being here," Mara said. "It means a lot that Sarah's best friend can support this." "Sarah would have liked you. You're different from her, but she valued people who were genuine, who showed up. You do both." Amanda paused. "Take care of them. They're special." "I know. I will." As the afternoon faded into evening, the party moved outside to the venue's patio overlooking the river. String lights came on overhead, creating a warm glow as the sun set over Portland's skyline. Sophie had finally tired herself out and was curled up on a bench with her head in Claire's lap, half asleep, but refusing to admit it. Ethan and Mara stood at the railing, watching the river flow past, their hands intertwined. "We did it," Mara said softly. "We actually did it. Did you doubt we would?" "Every single day until about 3 hours ago." She leaned her head on his shoulder. "I kept waiting for you to realize you'd made a mistake, that I wasn't worth the disruption to your life, that Sophie would change her mind about wanting me around. None of that was ever going to happen. I know that now, finally." She turned to face him fully. "Thank you for taking a chance on me that night in the restaurant, for saying yes to something insane because it was honest. Thank you for asking, for seeing something in us worth fighting for." They kissed softly, and across the patio, Sophie stirred and mumbled, "They're kissing again. Grown-ups are so weird." Claire laughed and stroked Sophie's hair. "They're happy, sweetheart. That's what happy looks like." "Then I want to be that kind of weird when I grow up." The reception wound down as evening deepened into night. Guests said their goodbyes with hugs and congratulations and promises to get together soon. Marcus and Claire offered to take Sophie for the night so Ethan and Mara could have their wedding night alone, but Sophie protested. "I want to come home with you. It's our first night as an official family. We should all be together." So they drove home together, newly married parents and their daughter, to the house that belonged to all of them equally now. Sophie fell asleep in the car, exhausted from excitement and cake and being the center of attention. Ethan carried her upstairs while Mara unlocked the door, and they put her to bed together with practiced coordination, changing her into pajamas, tucking her under covers, making sure her stuffed elephant was within reach. "Best day ever," Sophie mumbled, already half asleep. "Love you, Daddy. Love you, Mom Mara." "Love you too, Sophie girl," they said in unison, and Sophie smiled before drifting completely into sleep. Downstairs, Mara kicked off her heels with a sigh of relief, and Ethan loosened his tie. They collapsed onto the couch in the living room, their shared space, their life, and sat in comfortable silence. "So this is marriage," Mara said eventually. "Coming home exhausted, changing into comfortable clothes, sitting on the couch with someone you love. Disappointed?" "Not even a little bit." She curled against his side. "This is exactly what I wanted. The ordinary moments with people who matter. Coming home to family instead of emptiness." Ethan pulled her closer, feeling the weight of the day settling into something quieter and more profound. They'd started with a desperate question in a crowded restaurant, built trust through honesty and showing up, and ended here, married, committed, choosing each other every day. "What do you think?" he asked. "Was it worth it? All the uncertainty and fear and learning to trust?" Mara was quiet for a moment, thinking seriously about the question. "Remember that first coffee shop meeting? When I said we should decide if this makes sense and see if feelings follow?" "I remember. I was wrong. The feelings were there from the beginning, just buried under fear and self-protection. We didn't build feelings. We built the courage to acknowledge feelings that already existed." She looked up at him. "So yes, absolutely worth it. Every terrifying, uncertain moment of it." They sat there as the night deepened outside, the house quiet except for the old radiator's familiar clanking and the distant sound of Portland traffic. Mara's ring caught lamplight, throwing small rainbows across the wall, the emerald stone that matched her eyes, the symbol of permanent commitment they'd both been too scared to believe in until they learned how. "I have something for you," Ethan said suddenly, reaching into his jacket pocket. "I was going to give it to you tonight, but I forgot with all the chaos." He pulled out a folded piece of construction paper, its edges worn from being carried around. Mara unfolded it carefully, and her breath caught. It was Sophie's original question mark drawing, the one she'd made before they met Mara, with the empty space labeled "Our Family, Maybe?" But now, in the empty space between Ethan and Sophie's stick figures, someone had drawn a third figure with red-brown crayon hair and green marker eyes. Above it, in Sophie's careful printing, "Mom, Mara, not maybe, for real." Mara pressed the drawing to her chest, tears spilling down her cheeks. "When did she make this?" "Last week. She wanted me to give it to you on our wedding day. She said it was important you know the question mark was gone, that you're permanent." "I'm permanent," Mara repeated, like she was testing the words, learning to believe them. "I'm their family for real. For real. Forever." No more question marks. They sat holding each other while Mara cried happy tears, and Ethan felt the last pieces of his grief-fortified walls finally crumble completely. Upstairs, Sophie slept peacefully, dreaming whatever 7-year-olds dream about, safe in the knowledge that her family was complete. 6 months later, on a Saturday morning in April, Ethan woke to the smell of burning pancakes and Sophie's laughter echoing through the house. He found them in the kitchen, Mara at the stove looking flustered, Sophie at the table covered in flour from some baking experiment gone wrong. "We're making breakfast," Sophie announced. "Well, trying to. Mom Mara keeps burning things." "I'm an engineer, not a chef," Mara protested, scraping blackened pancake remnants into the trash. "The instructions said medium heat. This is medium heat." "This is medium high," Ethan corrected, adjusting the burner. "Let me help." They made breakfast together, imperfectly, with too much smoke and not enough edible pancakes, but laughing the entire time. They ate at the kitchen table with syrup and fresh fruit and the easy conversation of people who'd learned each other's rhythms completely. After breakfast, Sophie wanted to go to the park, then to the science museum, then to the ice cream shop even though it was barely noon. They said yes to all of it, spending the day together doing nothing special and everything important. That evening, after Sophie was in bed, Ethan and Mara sat on the porch swing they'd installed last month, watching the neighborhood settle into night. Mara's head rested on Ethan's shoulder, his arm around her waist, both of them quiet and content. "Do you ever think about that Christmas night?" Mara asked softly. "About how insane it was that I proposed to a stranger in a restaurant?" "Every single day." "Do you regret it? Any of it?" Ethan thought about the question seriously, about the fear and uncertainty, the mistakes and misunderstandings, the painful growth required to build something real. He thought about Sophie's drawings and Mara's honest confessions and learning to trust again after loss. "Not for a second," he said finally. "Every hard moment led here. To this porch, this family, this life. I'd do it all again exactly the same way. Even the part where I asked if you could be my new husband before knowing your middle name? Especially that part. That's what made you different. You were honest when everyone else was performing, real when everything else was fantasy." Mara smiled against his shoulder. "For the record, what is your middle name? We've been married 6 months and I still don't know." "James? Ethan James Walker. I like it. Very classic, very dad-like." "What's yours?" "Catherine. Mara Catherine Lewis. Well, Walker now. Mara Catherine Walker." She tested the name out loud, and Ethan heard the wonder in her voice, still amazed, even after months of marriage, that this was real and permanent and hers to claim. They swung gently in the cooling evening air, watching stars emerge in Portland's light-polluted sky. Somewhere in the house, Sophie's stuffed elephant sat on her nightstand beside a framed photo of their wedding day, all three of them laughing, covered in cake, perfectly imperfect. In the living room, Mara's metal sculpture caught moonlight through the window. In the office, their shared desk held 2 laptops and Sophie's latest drawing of the solar system. Evidence everywhere of lives fully intertwined, of broken pieces building something functional and beautiful, of 3 people who'd chosen each other against all conventional wisdom and made it work anyway. "We should go inside," Mara said eventually, though neither of them moved. "Early morning tomorrow? 5 more minutes." 5 more minutes, she agreed. They stayed there in the darkness, swinging gently, holding each other. 2 people who'd proposed marriage in a restaurant on Christmas night and somehow, impossibly, made that insane decision into something lasting. Not perfect, never perfect, but real and honest and committed to staying even when things got hard. A family built not from biology or tradition, but from choice. The most powerful kind of love there is. Inside the house, their shared life waited. But for now, they stayed on the porch swing, choosing each other in the quiet of an ordinary evening, knowing that tomorrow they'd wake up and choose each other again. And the day after that, and the day after that, and every day for the rest of their lives. Not because it was easy, not because it was conventional, but because that Christmas night, a stranger had asked a desperate question, and they'd both been brave enough to say yes to something impossible. And impossible had become their everyday reality. Pancakes and park visits, homework help and bedtime stories, disagreements about abstract art, and agreements about what matters most. A chosen family. A permanent family. Their family. Finally, completely, beautifully real.